Warrior Lore. Chapter 753. Great. This is great. The Du family is going to prosper. The elders of the Du family were so excited that they cried tears of joy when they saw the outstanding juniors of the Du family become disciples of the martial king realm. Du Hao, Du Yu, Du Liang, and the others were also happy. They had been working hard to cultivate and had built a good foundation. Now that they had become disciples of the martial king realm, they would definitely benefit a lot in the future. They would become famous experts and strengthen the Du family. Another evening, the sun slowly drilled into the thin clouds. As the sun set in the west, it turned into a red ball. The sunset spread and the clouds covered half the sky. Each layer was fainter than the previous one, covering the entire stone city. Under the sunset, a few figures slowly walked over. The one in front was an old woman who looked to be in her 70s. She wore a plain dress and looked old, but her steps were vigorous. Under her faint eyebrows, her face was full of wrinkles. It was as if the vicissitudes of time were written on her face. Beside the old woman, there was an old man who looked to be in his 50s. The people behind him also had an extraordinary aura. This group of people appeared in the stone city, leaving a trace under the sunset. However, the strange thing was that on the streets, not many people noticed them. They were right in front of them, but it was as if their vision was blurred. Just a guy who came out of a small town like this was able to win Miss Ao Tong's heart? The affairs of the world are hard to predict, hard to grasp. The old woman looked around. Her wrinkled face seemed to be filled with vicissitudes, but her eyes were deep. Elder Ming, we have arrived. We can make a move at any time. The old man in his 50s said to the old woman. His eyes were filled with respect. Make a move at night. Don't alert the others. The old woman's body paused. Her deep eyes were filled with some fluctuations. She said softly, remember my words. Don't hurt that child. Otherwise, don't blame me for being angry. Yes, Elder Ming. The old man nodded. He didn't dare to make Elder Ming unhappy. In the stone city, the setting sun rolled in the golden-red clouds, shining with golden light. The courtyard where Du Xiaofu and his drunkard father lived was exactly the same as before. It was not touched at all. In the courtyard, Du Xiaofu lay on the rattan chair that his drunkard father used to lie on until night fell. At night, the sky was full of dew. A crescent moon hung quietly in the southwest sky. The moonlight was somewhat cold and was also somewhat dark. The moon was dark and the stars were bright. However, the stars in the sky gradually became brighter and brighter. They shone on the hazy night clouds like a silver veil that enveloped Stone City. Du Xiaofu crossed his arms behind his neck and raised his head to look at the crescent moon in the clouds. He thought about how his drunkard father was like this all night long. Perhaps his drunkard father was only thinking about his mother and sister back then. Mother, Xiaojing, father, where are you? Du Xiaofu muttered as he gazed at the night sky. The hazy moonlight shone on the walls of the courtyard, on the leaves, on the pillars, on the armrest of the rattan chair, and on Du Xiaofu's face. A solemn and holy light flashed. Kid, be careful. There are uninvited guests. They're very strong. I'll hide first and act according to the situation. Be careful. Suddenly, Zhen Xingchuan's voice entered Du Xiaofu's ears. It was as if it resounded in Du Xiaofu's mind, and then disappeared. Boom! It was also at this moment that the surrounding space suddenly trembled. This tremor was soundless, and only Du Xiaofu could sense it. Du Xiaofu immediately became vigilant. He stood up from the rattan chair, and the profound qi in his body surged. But it was also at this moment that Du Xiaofu's face changed greatly. He felt the profound qi in his body stagnate, and a terrifying aura that he could not resist at all collapsed. Then, the space distorted and his vision blurred. In the next moment, everything seemed to be just a breath. When Du Xiaofu's vision began to recover, he was already on top of a mountain. At the peak of the mountain, the stars in the sky were bright, and the outline of the mountain range stretched into the distance. Du Xiaofu recognized this mountain. It was one of the peaks in the back mountains of the Du family. Just as Du Xiaofu was looking around vigilantly, several figures silently appeared at the peak of the mountain. With the appearance of these figures, the spatial fluctuations around the surrounding mountain became blurred. A total of 5 figures slowly appeared. Their bodies were wrapped in dazzling light, and their auras spread out. The halo of light around them was like stars. It was as dazzling as the sun, making it difficult for Du Xiaofu to look straight at them. Boom! With the appearance of these 5 figures, a terrifying aura rippled, causing Du Xiaofu's expression to suddenly become extremely serious. In this terrifying aura, Du Xiaofu felt a familiar aura. Bang! A low roar like a drum sounded. A figure walked out from the star-like brilliance. Then, the figure seemed to be illusory. In an instant, it turned into a horse-like monster that was dozens of feet tall. It had a white body and a black tail. It had a horn on its head and tiger teeth and tiger claws on its head. This is... Du Xiaofu's gaze trembled. Under that terrifying aura, the blood in his body began to boil. It's a barge. Du Xiaofu judged that this terrifying monster was a barge that was ranked at the top of the heavenly beast list. It was far above the Xinyun scarlet dragon. Rumor had it that a barge could eat tigers and leopards, fight against gods, and its sound was like a drum. It was extremely terrifying. Bang! The barge roared, and a terrifying aura swept out. Its momentum shook the heavens, and its sound was like a heavy hammer. It rumbled, causing the surrounding mountain to tremble. Qila, in a short instant, the terrifying barge charged towards Du Xiaofu. Its front hooves were like tiger claws, densely covered in metallic scales, and emitted runes. Its aura was as oppressive as a mountain, and its sound was like thunder. It directly suppressed Du Xiaofu. Sky-shaking wings. Du Xiaofu hurriedly made his move. In an instant, golden light burst out from his body, as if a dazzling sun. The barge was terrifying, and it was rumored that it came from an ancient bloodline. However, the golden-winged rock was the supreme of beasts. It would definitely not be suppressed by the barge. Chilala. Layers of golden runes erupted. Du Xiaofu waved his hand, directly colliding with the barge's claw. Du Xiaofu's body was sent flying back, and in an instant, the ground beneath his feet shattered. In a short moment of contact, the golden light rippled. The star-like radiance seemed to have sensed something and trembled. Beast Emperor. Du Xiaofu steadied his body. His eyes immediately trembled, and his face paled slightly. Looking at the enormous barge, Du Xiaofu's expression was extremely grave. This was a Beast Emperor. Compared to the mysterious Dragon King, it was many times stronger. The barge's enormous eyes were filled with shock. It was unknown whether it was shock that it was unable to do anything to the human before it, or because it sensed the supreme aura of a demonic beast from Du Xiaofu. Bang! Runes rippled from the barge's enormous body once more. It extended its huge, dustpan-like tiger claws, and its aura was even more terrifying than before. It once again suppressed Du Xiaofu. Roar. The roar was like a dragon's roar, like the cry of a divine elephant. The surrounding space rumbled and trembled violently. Its aura was unparalleled and disdainful. Mysterious runes rippled as countless fists flashed in Du Xiaofu's hand. In the end, they condensed into a single fist. Buzz. Du Xiaofu stomped the ground with a thunderous sound, and his figure lunged towards the barge. A fist met the terrifying claw, and the two immediately bombarded each other. In that instant, fist and claw collided, and a thunderous explosion resounded through the surrounding space. Crash! Golden runes scattered in all directions as surging energy ripples spread, causing the surrounding space to rapidly tremble. Rumble! A terrifying storm of energy unfurled like a hurricane, spreading far into the distance. Oomph! The surrounding rocks shattered, but Du Xiaofu was forced back several steps, and a muffled groan escaped his throat. However, this time, the enormous barge's body finally staggered and swayed quite a bit from the impact, and its huge eyes were once again filled with shock. Stop! A voice rang out, filled with vicissitudes of life. However, when it entered one's ears, it was completely silent, as if it was just an illusion. 2 more figures silently appeared. One of them was an old man who was over 50 years old and had an extraordinary aura. His gaze landed on Du Xiaofu's body. It was unknown whether it was due to Du Xiaofu's strength or some other reason, but the old man's eyes were filled with astonishment. An old woman slowly walked over. She looked to be in her 70s and wore a plain dress. She looked a little old, but her steps were vigorous. The old woman walked over to Du Xiaofu. Her deep eyes were fixed on Du Xiaofu, and her wrinkled face was filled with shock. She softly muttered, "It's too similar. It's simply too similar. Unbelievable, too unbelievable." Du Xiaofu vigilantly looked at the people in front of him. Du Xiaofu could sense a terrifying aura from the old man and old woman. That aura was so terrifying that it made Du Xia feel that it was even greater than the pressure he felt from his master, Gu Qingyang. The auras from the two people were invisible, but they were all pervasive, blending into the surrounding space. Similar, too similar, too similar. The old woman walked in front of Du Xiaofu with a gentle look in her eyes. However, on her wrinkled face, there was a deep and spirited look in her eyes, causing Du Xiaofu's heart to tremble when he looked at her. Chapter 754. What is your name? The old woman walked in front of Du Xiaofu and looked at Du Xiaofu from left to right. Du Xiaofu looked at the two people in front of him. His gaze swept over the barge that had retreated and the other four figures wrapped in starlight. He took a deep breath and replied to the old woman, "My name is Du Xiaofu." Du Xiaofu, Xiaofu. The old woman murmured with a complicated look on her face. No one knew what she was thinking at this moment. Elder Ming, there shouldn't be any mistakes. Bring him back for testing. The old man, who was over 50 years old, put away his astonishment and said to the old woman beside him in a low voice. However, his gaze was still on Du Xiaofu. The old woman raised her hand slightly and waved to the old man beside her, who was over 50 years old. She looked at Du Xiaofu and sighed softly. This little barren land on the border actually has such a heavenly talent. It's beyond my expectations. Du Xiaofu looked at the old woman in front of him. His eyes flashed with a strange light. He said, "Who are you? Why did you bring me here?" "We are." The old woman opened her mouth. When the old man heard this, he immediately interrupted the old woman and said, "Elder Ming, this brat doesn't have the right to know who we are. Why doesn't he have the right? Don't forget that he also has the blood of your race. He is just." The old woman sighed inwardly, and her deep eyes rippled with these fluctuations. Hearing the old man and the old woman's words, Du Xiaofu's expression changed. Suddenly, his gaze trembled. He stared at the old woman and the old man. His expression changed and he said, "You." The words were at the tip of his tongue, but Du Xiaofu didn't know how to ask. He could only tremble as if he was struck by lightning. The people in front of him, the aura of the figures in the starlight, everything was the same as when Du Xiaofu's father and the North vanquishing king showed him the scroll space. No wonder he felt a sense of déjà vu from the start. Du Xiaofu felt that these people were the people who separated his family and took away his mother and sister. However, now that he suddenly saw these people, Du Xiaofu realized how little he knew about these people. At this moment, he didn't know where these people came from. Du Xiaofu also didn't know who these people were. Du Xiaofu only knew that these people were all very powerful. They were so powerful that he couldn't resist them, especially the old woman in front of him. She made him seem small. The old woman looked at Du Xiaofu and asked softly, "Do you know who this person called Xiaojing is?" Xiaojing. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's heart trembled, but then his trembling heart suddenly calmed down. Du Xiaofu had thought of that name countless times in his heart. He thought that he would be especially nervous after hearing it. But at this moment, Du Xiaofu was abnormally calm. He was so calm that the old woman seemed to be a little surprised. Looking at the old woman in front of him, Du Xiaofu said, "Xiaojing, you should be my twin sister that I haven't seen before. I think I know who you are." The old woman looked at Du Xiaofu. Then she smiled faintly and said to Du Xiaofu, "It seems that you also know some things. I will know in the future. I will know everything." Du Xiaofu looked at the old woman and added, "Definitely. Child, come with me." The old woman looked at Du Xiaofu and said. Her old face forced a smile. On her kind and wrinkled face, there was an imperceptible sigh. "I know that you are very strong, but if you want to take me away, I'm afraid that it won't be too easy." Du Xiaofu was on guard. The aura in his body fluctuated again. Although he did not know why these people wanted to take him away, from their appearance and attitude, Du Xiaofu felt that it was probably not something good. And giving up without putting up a fight was not Du Xiaofu's personality. Humph, you overestimate yourself. Sensing the aura fluctuating within Du Xiaofu's body, the old man glanced at him. His eyes were filled with undisguised disdain and contempt. Child, come with me. You are powerless to resist. The old woman said to Du Xiaofu, powerless to resist, but I won't give up without putting up a fight. Du Xiaofu spat out these words. A golden light burst out from his body. His mind fell on the purple-gold heavenly tower behind him. No matter what, he would not give up without putting up a fight. You're quite arrogant. You really are Miss Ao Tong's child. The old woman secretly praised him. The young man before her could remain calm and collected before them. He faced them calmly without changing his arrogance. Naturally, she could tell what this meant. With that, the old woman looked at Du Xiaofu and continued, but you still can't resist. Do you want to rely on that strand of soul on you? I'm just a soul, but if you want to take me away so easily, I won't agree. These words rang out from Du Xiaofu's bosom. A small tower floated out from Du Xiaofu's chest. Afterwards, mist rose up, and Zhan Qingchuan's soul appeared before Du Xiaofu. He stared at the old woman and the old man who was over 50 years old. A trace of seriousness flashed through his eyes. At this moment, Zhan Qingchuan's seemingly wretched temperament seemed to have completely disappeared. Instead, he was filled with the aura of an expert. He stared at the old woman and said, I don't know where you're from, but with your strength, why bother making things difficult for a young man? Brother Qingchun has been discovered. Seeing Zhan Qingchuan's soul, Du Xiaofu was secretly surprised. He never thought that this old woman would be able to discover Zhan Qingchuan's soul, who was hiding in the small tower. Her strength must have reached an extremely terrifying level. I really never thought, that you would be someone who has cultivated that technique. The old woman stared at Zhen Qingchun. Her eyes moved slightly, and she smiled faintly. Back then, I've seen people who have cultivated the technique that you're cultivating now. They were all extraordinary. However, looking at you now, it seems that you've taken an unconventional path, which led to your cultivation going berserk. Zhen Qingchun stared at the old woman. His eyes moved slightly. He looked like a young man at this moment, but he had an imposing aura. He said, why bother making things difficult for a young man? You're just a soul. It seems that the people of the outside world are all very arrogant and condescending. The old man seemed to have become somewhat impatient. He looked at Zhan Qingchuan's illusory soul, and his eyes flickered slightly. Humph, if I were at my peak, I would be able to be arrogant in front of you too. Zhen Qingchun stared at the old man. His eyes were filled with absolute fear when he looked at the old woman. The old man's eyes rippled with coldness. The old woman waved her hand at the old man. She looked at Zhen Qingchun and said, this has nothing to do with you. There are some things that you don't have the strength to interfere in even if you were at your peak. Seeing that you've cultivated that technique, you should be related to Xiaofu. You should leave. Zhen Qingchuan's soul stood in front of Du Xiaofu and said, you're right. He is indeed related to me. I'm his elder brother. If you want to leave, leave with me. Du Xiaofu stared at Zhen Qingchun, and his eyes flickered. At this moment, his mind was also focused on the purple-gold heavenly tower. The golden rock wings in his body were ready to explode at any time. Under such circumstances, he could only give it his all, regardless of the consequences. Sigh. The old woman shook her head and glanced at Zhen Qingchun. Finally, she looked at Du Xiaofu and said, you should have the right to know some things about me. Your sister Xiaojing has been suffering from a heavenly disease since she was young. Although she tried her best to find a cure, it was not very effective. In the end, she found a way. Perhaps only you can cure her. If you delay, I'm afraid the consequences will be unimaginable. Looking at Du Xiaofu, the old woman continued, I've told you everything I should tell you. It's up to you whether you want to leave with us or not. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's eyes trembled. He looked at the old woman and his eyes flickered. However, his tone was still calm. He said, how is my sister Xiaojing now? She can still hold on for now, but I'm afraid she won't be able to hold on for long, the old woman said to Du Xiaofu. Okay, I'll go with you. Du Xiaofu looked at the old woman and nodded. But before I go with you, I want to bid farewell to my clansmen. The old woman looked at Du Xiaofu as an undetectable ripple secretly flashed across her eyes. Moments later, she nodded and said, I'll wait for you here tomorrow morning. Remember, don't mention us to anyone, or it won't be good for them. Go. Old Ming, let this little. Just as the old man who was over 50 opened his mouth to speak, he was interrupted by the old woman. I'll take charge of this matter. Don't make this old woman unhappy. Yes. The old man helplessly nodded, not daring to say anything else. The old woman stood silently on the mountain peak as she watched Du Xiaofu and Zhang Qingquan's Yuan spirits leave. It was a long time later that she softly muttered, Perhaps I would feel better if you didn't go. Why did you agree to go? This is a sin, Sai. They're too strong. I was discovered the moment I tried to spy on them. These people's origins are far from simple. Which faction does your mother come from? Outside the Du family's residence, Zhang Qingquan's gaze trembled as he regained his wretched temperament. The awe-inspiring aura from before had completely disappeared. I also don't know where they come from. I also want to know, Du Xiaofu softly said. His clear and deep eyes were currently suffused with a faint golden glow. Faint golden blood seeped out from his lower lip. It was the mark of his teeth that had been left behind by him. I had planned to release 5 chapters today, but in reality, I can only finish 4 chapters. Tomorrow, Xiaoyu will continue with the first chapter. Today, I was thinking about some details of the plot and wasted a lot of time. The next chapter is very important to the book, so it will be slower. In addition, many brothers have left comments and opinions on the book review section and WeChat, saying that the first princess belongs to us. Xiaoyu has read them seriously, but Xiaoyu can't say anything, nor can he reveal any spoilers. Please wait for the next part. In the end, I shamelessly asked for flowers to thank everyone. Chapter 755. You seem to be very agitated. Looking at Du Xiaofu, Zhang Qingquan's gaze wavered. Am I? I don't think so. Du Xiaofu turned his head and walked into the Du family. What? Third young master, you're going on a long trip? After a while, Du Xiaofu found Yuanli, Oyangshuang, Du Xiaoman, Mysterious Dragon King, Golden Condor King, and Shan Yuxiu in the courtyard. He informed everyone that he was going to leave for a while. Everyone was confused when they heard this. I have to go out and do something. I don't have the antidote for the goo poison pill on you. You can go to Chaoyao City and get it from the King of Medicine. Stay in the Du family for a while and guide Du Hao, Du Gue, and the others in their cultivation. Du Xiaofu said to Golden Condor King, Mysterious Dragon King, and the others. Little junior brother, where are you going? I have to go with you. Yuanli said to Du Xiaofu. He was ordered to protect his little junior brother. Naturally, he had to go with him. Otherwise, when he returned to the Manchu, his master would skin him alive. Third senior brother, I'm going to do something this time. I'll tell you in detail later. I'll go alone. You can go back to the Manchu first. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Du Xiaofu smiled at Yuanli. Do my father and uncle know? Du Xiaoman looked at Du Xiaofu and frowned. Du Xiaofu shook his head and said to Du Xiaoman, Big sister, tell first uncle and second uncle tomorrow. I'm afraid they'll ask and be worried. Okay. Du Xiaoman hesitated for a while and then nodded. No matter what you're going to do, you have to be careful. Oyangshuang glanced at Du Xiaofu. Her beautiful face was slightly colored. Du Xiaofu smiled and nodded. Du Xiaofu, I have to follow you. Those guys are definitely abnormally strong. You'll be in danger if you go alone. Moments later, in the courtyard that Du Xiaofu had been living in, Zhang Qingquan's soul glared at Du Xiaofu and said, You're alone. If something happens, you won't even have a companion. Don't worry, I will definitely come back safely. This is also an opportunity for me. Maybe I can really see the person I want to see, Du Xiaofu said to Zhang Qingquan. This time, Du Xiaofu did not want to bring his big brother, Zhang Qingquan, with him. Looking at Du Xiaofu, Zhang Qingquan's illusory soul stared into Du Xiaofu's eyes and said seriously, Are you afraid of dragging me into this? No. Du Xiaofu shook his head and smiled at Jin Qingchun. I know they're very strong, and among the people I know, you're the strongest. If I really don't come back, I'll be counting on you to save me. That's true. I'm not bragging. Just wait until I'm at my peak. Humph. Zhen Qingchun was very pleased with Du Xiaofu's words. His eyes flickered as he said, however, your master Gu Qingyang is not weak either, and the master of the ancient heaven sect, Sima Taxing, has hidden his strength quite deeply as well. However, the strongest is still that old woman. Her aura is unfathomable. She's probably one of the few experts in the world. I've mentioned you to Big Sister. If you need anything, just come to her. Du Xiaofu said to Jin Qingchun. All right, if I don't come back, I'll wait for you to save me. During this time, the Du family will depend on you. Then be careful. Those people are related to your mother and sister. I hope you won't be in too much danger. Zhen Qingchun didn't say anything else, but his eyes flickered. How could Zhen Qingchun not understand Du Xiaofu's thoughts? That kid didn't want to drag him down, so he didn't bring him along. Du Xiaofu nodded and walked out of the courtyard. His figure flashed and disappeared into the night. Kid, if you really don't come back, even if I have to risk my life, as your big brother, I'll definitely make them pay the price. Looking at Du Xiaofu's disappearing figure, Zhang Qingchuan's illusory eyes flickered with runes. Night. A bright moon set in the west. The sky was getting darker and darker. This was the darkness before dawn. Elder Ming, will that kid take the opportunity to escape? On the mountain peak, the old man who was over 50 years old looked at the night sky and the bright moon setting in the west. After hesitating for a moment, he asked the old woman who had been quietly resting with her eyes closed. The old woman opened her slightly closed eyes and said softly, "It would be great if he really escaped. This old woman might feel a lot better." Elder Ming, that kid is just an ant in the outside world. Once we return to the clan, Miss Xiaojing will be safe and sound. The old man said softly. Behind the old man, 5 figures stood together and waited quietly. Their auras were completely restrained, but it also caused the space to freeze. Ant? Do you think the flesh and blood left behind by Miss Ao Tong is an ant? He's about the same age as Miss Xiaojing, although his strength hasn't reached Miss Xiaojing's level. Although he's not as strong as Miss Xiaojing, with his martial king cultivation, he can already fight against a martial Emperor Barracuda. If my eyes aren't blurred, he's also a spiritual talisman master. His spiritual energy is extraordinary. The cultivation method he cultivates seems to be the orthodox cultivation method of the great golden-winged Peng clan. Just this alone is already inconceivable and extraordinary. Facing you and me, he can still advance and retreat without being affected. There aren't many people of the same generation in the clan who have such a state of mind. Do you think such a person is an ant? Even compared to those of the same generation in the clan, a conservative estimate is enough for him to enter the top 100. The old woman stared closely at the old man. Some displeasure appeared in her deep eyes on her wrinkled face. She said, "Qingyu, you're a protector in the clan. You need to watch your words. Whether you're willing to admit it or not, this Du Xiaofu is Miss Ao Tong's flesh and blood. Half of her blood flows through his body, and so do you. If he's an ant, then it's fine if you slap your own face, but don't slap the clan's face. Those people outside are all watching." Hearing this, the old man trembled slightly. He then said respectfully, "Elder Ming, please calm down. I understand." Sigh. The old woman sighed slightly. Looking at the sky, she mumbled, "Why doesn't this brat run? Why does he have to make this old woman feel uncomfortable?" Swish. Just as the old woman spoke, a faint golden figure streaked across the sky and landed on the mountain peak. The faint golden light receded, and Du Xiaofu's face was slightly pale. However, on his resolute face, his eyes were still clear and deep. "You're early. It's not even dawn yet." The old woman looked at Du Xiaofu's clear eyes and asked. Du Xiaofu straightened his body and raised his head. Looking at the night sky, he then looked at the old woman and said, "It's almost dawn. You don't want to be seen by others, and you like to do things sneakily. I could only come early so that you wouldn't be seen." Hearing Du Xiaofu's words and looking at Du Xiaofu's face and eyes, the old woman's gaze moved. She had a feeling as if she was facing a calm seal. The young man before her seemed to have a seal within his body. It seemed calm, but perhaps one day the seal would loosen, and who knew what terrifying thing would appear. After 2 breaths of time, Elder Ming looked at Du Xiaofu and sighed. Looks like you have resentment in your heart. No resentment, only hatred. Du Xiaofu directly replied. The old woman was stunned. Then she smiled bitterly and said, You hate us? I only hate that I'm not strong enough. Du Xiaofu looked at the old woman and asked, How are my mother and sister? Chapter 756. They are very good. Elder Ming nodded. Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Ming. He didn't know what to say. After a while, he raised his head and asked Elder Ming, Why didn't they come to find my father and me? Elder Ming gazed at Du Xiaofu and said, Do you think that because your mother and younger sister abandoned you and your father all these years, you're resenting them for not looking for you? Du Xiaofu was silent. He had been worried all this time. However, besides this worry, there were also some doubts buried deep in his heart. After a while, Du Xiaofu took a deep breath. He looked at Elder Ming and asked, What kind of illness does Xiaojing have? If you can't cure her, can I? Miss Xiaojing's illness is very rare. Because you are her twin brother, if they can find a way, you might have an 80% chance of curing Miss Xiaojing. Elder Ming said, Is it very serious? Du Xiaofu continued to ask, We can't delay any longer. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. Elder Ming looked at Du Xiaofu and said, In other words, if I go back with you this time, I will be able to see Xiaojing and my mother? Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Ming. At this moment, his gaze was somewhat complicated. There was some nervousness, some anticipation, and even some fear. However, there was also some happiness. He had always been persistent in his goal and worked hard to cultivate. He wanted to become an absolute expert as soon as possible. It was also that one day, he could see his mother and twin sister. Now, a possible opportunity had suddenly appeared in front of him. He might be able to see the 2 people he had been thinking about day and night for 18 years. This feeling made it difficult for Du Xiaofu to calm down. You are only going to save your sister. Stop dreaming about seeing Xiaojing and Aodong. You don't have the right to see them. The 50-year-old man had not said anything due to Old Ming's warning. However, when he heard Du Xiaofu's words at this moment, he could not help but interrupt. There was some hidden contempt in his eyes. Du Xiaofu looked at the old man, then looked at Elder Ming and said, You just said that only I have a chance to cure Xiaojing? That's right. Only you have a chance. Elder Ming seemed to have some doubts, but he still nodded and replied, Then I suddenly feel that I don't plan to go. Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Ming and suddenly refused. I am me, and Xiaojing is Xiaojing. We've never met before. To me, perhaps she's just a familiar stranger. I still have my own matters to attend to, so it's best if I don't go with you. Elder Ming was stunned when he heard this. Humph, there are some things that are not up to you to decide. The old man glared fiercely at Du Xiaofu and said in a deep voice, showing signs of attacking at any time. I don't know what you need me to do to cure Xiaojing, but I know that since you've come looking for me, it naturally has to be me. I can't beat you now, but if I take things too hard and die, I'm afraid that you won't be able to achieve your goal. Du Xiaofu stared fixedly at the old man. A sharp gaze filled with determination shot out as he said in a deep voice, There's no need to flaunt your seniority in front of me. If I had cultivated for as long as you, no matter who you are, you wouldn't have the right to be arrogant in front of me. Brat. The old man's expression darkened greatly. He stared at Du Xiaofu as his aura began to surge, and the coldness in his eyes began to fluctuate. The brat before him shouldn't have come to this world in the first place. In the old man's eyes, he had only insulted the clan and left behind a stain. The clan had always wanted to completely remove this stain, but it just so happened that this stain was difficult to remove. Now, this stain was actually swaying and clamoring in front of him. How could he not be furious? You don't dare to kill me because you need me. You also don't have the guts to kill me. No matter how much I make you unhappy, you don't dare to kill me. Am I right? Du Xiaofu stared at the old man in his 50s. A disdainful sneer flashed across his faint golden eyes as he said, If you have the ability, then kill me now. Do you dare? If you don't dare, the next time you try to kill me, perhaps the one who will die will be you." Du Xiaofu enunciated each and every word clearly. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, the old man in his 50s had a cold expression on his face. His aura fluctuated, and his eyes were about to spit fire. If looks could kill, then Du Xiaofu would definitely be killed by the old man 10 times over. Enough. Elder Ming stood in front of the old man in his 50s. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Child, I know that you have some ability and methods. However, believe me, your threat is still insufficient. Perhaps you are right. It is normal for you to hate. If you hate that you are not strong enough." Elder Ming sighed softly. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Come with me. Once we reach there, I promise you that I will try my best to arrange for you to meet whoever you want. As for the outcome, I do not dare to guarantee." Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Ming. A long while later, he nodded slightly and said, "All right, I will follow you." Ayo! A low and deep beast roar sounded as the barge transformed. Elder Ming and the old man in his 50s leaped onto the barge. Hula! A bright moon-like light enveloped Du Xiaofu. Within the light, Du Xiaofu felt the surrounding space distort. Everything in his body came to a standstill, after which he seemed to have lost consciousness. The darkness before dawn faded away, and the light of dawn slowly awakened the sleeping creatures. The blue dome gradually faded from the sky. Far away from Stone City, a soft mist rose above the barbaric Beast Mountain Range. The mountain range was dyed hazy and illusory by the mist. Stone City was quiet in the early morning. When the first ray of light pierced through the mist, the sound of children and youths practicing martial arts could be heard from all over Stone City. His voice was loud and clear, full of vigor and power. No one knew what had happened last night in a certain part of the Stone City. A super expert had once descended upon this savage wasteland. The Stone Dragon Empire had defeated the Tianhu Empire, Jinshan Empire, and Zhenghong Empire. They had defeated many experts from the three empires' allied forces. The entire empire celebrated. The emperor had ordered the three armies to be rewarded. There were many nobles and generals, and among them, the Saint Child of the Great Luan sect was mentioned. It was said that the Saint Child of the Great Luan sect was a legendary figure. During the 3 days of the celebration, the entire empire was in an uproar. Millions of citizens worshipped him. It was said that during the ceremony, a golden dragon appeared in the Imperial Dragon City. The dragon's roar resounded through the clouds. This made the millions of citizens worship him even more sincerely. It was a miracle. God had blessed the empire. However, some observant people noticed that Courage King Du Xiaofu's name wasn't on the list of names bestowed by the emperor during this national celebration. Even the World Society and the Heavenly Beast Palace were not mentioned. Instead, the Saint Child's name was known throughout the empire. What is the Imperial Palace trying to do? Are they trying to make people disappointed? In the early morning, the North Vanquishing King's skinny and dark face was lit up. There was a faint golden light in his eyes. He murmured, "This time, there was no Heavenly Beast Palace, no World Society, and my grandson. How could there be a celebration?" "Grandpa, your status is different. You can't say too much," Xie Fei said softly. She was wearing a light blue dress. Her waist was slim and her skin was smooth. "Why wouldn't I dare to say it? I heard that Xiaofu killed many people from the Divine Light Court. This time, the Great Luan sect also appeared. The Imperial Palace wants to get rid of him after he has outlived his usefulness. I'm disappointed. The North Vanquishing King's eyes darkened. He clenched his fists in his long sleeves. He was dissatisfied with the Imperial Palace. "No, I'm still alive. I won't allow anyone to bully Xiaofu. I'm going to the Imperial Palace. I'm going to seek justice." As soon as he finished speaking, the North Vanquishing King left. Sigh. Xie Fei sighed softly. She was like an orchid, charming and boneless. A few strands of hair casually fluttered around her waist. Her eyes, which were originally bright and attractive, were now a little dim. She murmured, "First Princess, what are you thinking in your heart?" When Du Xiaofu woke up, he felt that his eyelids were heavy. He immediately opened his eyes and found himself in an antique room. The room was simple, but it was not shabby. It was filled with an ancient aura. Du Xiaofu stood up vigilantly. He checked his body and found that nothing was wrong. The purple-gold heavenly tower was still on his back. Everything was fine. What a refreshing smell. Feeling a little relieved, Du Xiaofu took a deep breath. Soon after, his expression became slightly surprised. He discovered that there seemed to be a kind of energy contained within the air. This energy was not like the energy of spiritual herbs or heavenly treasures. It was the energy that existed in the air. If he could cultivate in this environment, he would be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort compared to the outside world. This was enough to prove that this was a precious place. It was rare to see. The door was ajar. There was no one in the room. Creak. Du Xiaofu pushed open the ajar door. He looked up and saw the dazzling light of the morning sun shining in the sky. This was a courtyard on the side of a mountain. As far as the eye could see, there were endless mountains. The bright red morning light was like a golden waterfall. It shone on the towering peaks and the cliffs. The mountains were green. One could faintly see the ancient buildings with exquisite carvings. This was a vast space. It was unknown where it existed in this world. The mountains were endless. The mountains were green. The cliffs were steep, and there were surging rivers. The atmosphere of this space was extremely ancient. It was unknown how many years it had existed. It was as if it had existed for eternity. Chapter 757. Du Xiaofu looked around. The energy of heaven and earth was rich in this space. An ancient aura filled the entire space. The vast space was magnificent and the mountains were undulating. At the peak of the mountain, there were clouds and mist rising everywhere. It was auspicious. This was like a place of immortals and gods. It was majestic and sacred. A blue stone path wound around the mountain. Ancient steps led up step by step, leading directly to the peak of the mountain. Around the peak of the mountain, there were countless mountains. They were so tall that they reached the clouds and were surrounded by mist. There was an indescribable aura in the air. It gave people a feeling of immortality. There was an ancient mottled stone pavilion on the peak of the mountain. The surroundings were green and mossy. A figure stood with his hands behind his back. A strand of light purple hair fluttered gently. Under the hair, there was a pair of cold eyes. It made people feel like they were looking at an azura. There was coldness in the sharpness. However, this guy was also very handsome. The news has been confirmed. The person who was brought here by Guardian Qing Yu and Grandma Ming is called Du Xiaofu. He is now in the clan. A voice sounded. At the bottom of the blue stone stairs, a young man in a brocade robe appeared. In the next moment, the young man in the brocade robe strangely appeared beside the purple-haired man. He said to the purple-haired man, "He is fourth aunt's son. He is Xiaojing's so-called brother. Now that he is here, do you have any thoughts? How can he be compared to Xiaojing? I don't know why the clan wants him to come here. However, I think we should remind him that this is not a place for him to come. He will not be used to this place. We have to do it for his own good." The purple-haired man's voice was very calm. It was so calm that there was no fluctuation in his tone. There was also no fluctuation in his azura eyes. In his eyes, it was as if the mountain was the only thing that mattered. What if he came here with an ulterior motive? Or someone wants him to come and cause trouble? The young man in the brocade robe smiled. Then we will kill him. The purple-haired young man raised his eyes slightly and spoke softly. His tone was still calm and unperturbed. Do you want to do it yourself? The young man in the brocade robe looked at the purple-haired man and asked. He did not seem to find the purple-haired man's words strange. Do you think he's qualified? The purple-haired young man asked the young man in the brocade robe. Then, his eyes moved slightly and he said softly, "Be careful. Don't let fourth aunt know. After all, she is fourth aunt." The mountains were luxuriant and ancient. "Mother, Xiaojing, I'm here. Are you here now?" Du Xiaofu murmured at the peak of the mountain. For the past 18 years, he had been yearning to visit this place, and now he had finally arrived. His mother and younger sister were here, but he couldn't meet them. Du Xiaofu's heart was filled with complex emotions. The emotions that had been suppressed for a long time were stirred at this moment. Goo! Demonic beasts roared. Just as Du Xiaofu finished muttering, The roars of demonic beasts rang out in the distance. A terrifying aura rippled out. A huge bird flapped its wings and circled around. It looked like a black bird with 3 heads and 6 tails. It's Swanee. Du Xiaofu raised his head and trembled slightly. That terrifying bird was actually a terrifying demonic beast called Swanee. Swanee was ranked on the heavenly beast ranking. It was even higher than the barge beast. It was rumored that if a cultivator could obtain a Swanee, they would be able to suppress all evil beings. Goo! The Swanee flapped its wings in the sky. Its voice was like a phoenix's cry that could pierce through metal and stone. Its body emitted a terrifying aura. Its body was like a dark cloud, and its aura made one's heart tremble. How good would it be if I could drink some blood? It's just that my strength is a bit lacking. I've just reached the Beast King realm, so the effect won't be as good as that barge beast. Du Xiaofu looked at the roaring Swanee before him. If he could devour some of the blood of this Swanee, not only would he be able to refine his bones and cleanse his marrows, he would also be able to suppress all evil creatures. This was a great opportunity. However, this Swanee was only at the Beast King realm, which made Du Xiaofu feel a little regretful. The barge beast he saw in the Du family was already at the Beast Emperor realm. The effect would definitely be much better. Du Xiaofu's current thoughts were as if the Swanee and barge beast were his private stash and could be eaten by him at any time. At this moment, there were more than 10 figures on the huge Swanee. If they knew that Du Xiaofu's first thought upon seeing the Swanee was to drink its blood, who knew what they would think? Swoosh, 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 swoosh. As the Swanee flapped its wings, several figures flew out from the back of the Swanee. They were wrapped in light fluctuations, and the aura around them spread out like a halo, making them look like the sun. Du Xiaofu raised his head and looked over. Soon after, he frowned slightly. When he took a closer look, he saw that the figures wrapped in light were standing in the air. However, it was not difficult to tell that they were all 12 or 13-year-old youths. However, it was undeniable that each and every one of these youths was abnormally powerful. Du Xiaofu frowned slightly and was deeply shocked. Initial Martial King realm. Du Xiaofu was shocked, absolutely shocked. There were a total of 10 youths, and they were all in the Martial King realm. The strongest one was actually at the peak of the Martial King realm. There was also a youth who looked like he was less than 10 years old. Du Xiaofu felt that his aura had already reached the peak of the Martial Lord realm. Huff! Du Xiaofu thought that his self-control was good, but when he saw this scene, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. A 12 or 13-year-old Martial King realm and a 10-year-old Martial Lord realm complete peak. What kind of concept was this? If any of them were in the outside world, they would be able to instantly kill their peers. There were many talented people in the outside world who might not be able to reach the Martial Lord realm by the age of 30. However, in this place, a youth less than 10 years old was already showing signs of stepping into the Martial King realm. If this news were to spread, it would not only shock everyone, but no one would believe it at all. This should be one of them. How dare he run away? This time, we must teach him a lesson. He asked for it, and he dares to run away. We must teach him a lesson. The youths looked at Du Xiaofu one by one. Their eyes were not kind as they chatted. However, although these youths were still young, their temperaments were already extraordinary. They were all outstanding people. At first glance, one could tell that they were dragons and phoenixes among men. Hey, do you want to surrender yourself, or do you want me to teach you a lesson? A youth with big eyes looked at Du Xiaofu and scolded. Although he was young, he was already quite majestic. You have the wrong person. Du Xiaofu frowned. These youths were very young, but their attitudes were extremely arrogant and rude. They were completely different from the moral etiquette of the 4 books and 5 classics that Du Xiaofu was forced to learn when he was young. This made Du Xiaofu unhappy. How dare you quibble and defy orders? You are clearly not one of us. I will ask you one more time. Will you surrender yourself, or will I kill you directly? A youth who seemed to be relatively older than the other youths stepped out of the crowd and looked at Du Xiaofu with disdain and arrogance. This youth did not take Du Xiaofu seriously. The gaze in his eyes showed that he was not joking. It seemed that if Du Xiaofu did not obey, he would immediately kill Du Xiaofu. You must have gotten the wrong person. Your elders invited me here, Du Xiaofu said. He was getting more and more unhappy. He frowned slightly and faintly felt that there was something wrong. Impudent. You actually dare to speak such nonsense. The elders of the clan invited you here. How dare you speak such lies? Surrender without resistance, or you'll be killed on the spot. The young man shouted loudly. Kneel down and surrender yourself. Behave yourself, or you will be killed. The youths shouted one after another. Their voices were like muffled thunder. These youths had received news that many servants from the outside world had escaped today. Therefore, they took the initiative to recommend themselves to capture those who wanted to escape. It could be considered as finding some fun in their daily hard work. Lower your voice. You have the wrong person. Go back to where you came from. Du Xiaofu frowned and did not intend to pay too much attention to these youths. Du Xiaofu turned and left as soon as he finished speaking. The group of youths were petrified. Usually, when the servants saw them, they would be extremely respectful. At this moment, this fellow actually completely ignored them. It was not difficult for them to see that the other party's eyes were simply looking at them as if they were children. Stop. Kneel down and surrender yourself. Let's just kill him as an example to others. One by one, the young men's faces turned red. Then, their figures flashed out. More than a dozen youths immediately surrounded Du Xiaofu, tightly in the middle. Waves of powerful auras erupted. Don't go too far. Ask clearly, and then you will know. It is not a good thing to be so arrogant at such a young age. Du Xiaofu looked at these youths and his gaze became sharper. Io, this is the first time I have encountered such a bold servant. Today, I must kill the chicken to warn others. The youth sneered. Although he was young, his aura was very powerful. Runes rippled around his body. It was as shocking as a mountain. You'd better retreat. Du Xiaofu's fierce expression began to turn cold. Chapter 758. Insolent slave, I'll kill you, the young man shouted. As soon as he finished speaking, he couldn't hold it in any longer and started to attack. His fist was wrapped in dazzling runes as he punched towards Du Xiaofu. The terrifying aura was extraordinary. Let me have a taste of it too. The other young man shouted loudly, and he wasn't willing to fall behind as well. He took a step forward and waved his hand, causing ancient talisman markings to spray out from his palm with the intention of suppressing Du Xiaofu first and seizing the limelight. Although you guys are young, you've angered me. I can still teach you a lesson or two. The look in Du Xiaofu's eyes became intimidating. He directly attacked, simple and direct. His fist collided with the fist of the young man who attacked first. A thunderous sound rang out as runes exploded, shaking the space. Ding ding. The young man immediately staggered back. His small fist was red and numb. Blood dripped from his fist. His fist had been broken by a single punch. At this moment, Du Xiaofu continued to attack in a split second. His body leaped up with the help of the momentum, and a golden palm print directly collided with the second young man. The young man's palm was very powerful. He was a martial king who had just ascended to the martial king realm. However, the aura of his attack was like a mountain. It was enough to instantly kill someone of the same cultivation level. Du Xiaofu's palm exploded with golden lightning. The aura was overbearing and terrifying. In the end, it directly collided with the first young man's palm print. Bang! A dull sound rang out. Under Du Xiaofu's palm, the young man was directly sent flying by a huge force. Blood started to flow from his palm. Leave, all of you. Ask clearly before you come back. Du Xiaofu looked at the young men around him. His aura was fierce and overbearing. At this moment, the dozen or so youths were looking at Du Xiaofu in shock. They had never thought that such a situation would occur. The slaves are rebelling. Let's kill them together. We can't let them go. After a short moment of stupefaction, the dozen or so youths shouted loudly. The strongest youth rushed towards Du Xiaofu. In that instant, ancient runes flooded the entire space and exploded out in all directions with an extremely formidable aura. A terrifying aura swept towards Du Xiaofu in an instant. Rumble. At the same time, these 10+ young men attacked at practically the exact same time. All of them waved their hands and erupted with talisman profound energy, and they attacked successively and directly besieged Du Xiaofu. Sky-shaking wings, stormy waves palm, oscillating fist. Du Xiaofu was also enraged at this moment. He waved his hand and attacked. Strands of golden talisman runes erupted and directly blocked the attacks of the dozen or so youths around him. An astonishing aura erupted. These young men were valiant. They were like dragons and phoenixes among men. However, Du Xiaofu wasn't an ordinary person. Those who didn't know Du Xiaofu were fine, but those who knew Du Xiaofu wouldn't dare to provoke Du Xiaofu. Bang, bang, bang. A deep and muffled sound burst out, and the dozen or so youngsters were sent flying away like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. Ouch! The youths cried and spat out blood. They cried for their parents. Coo! The bai, and hovering in the air, saw that the situation wasn't good. It immediately flapped its wings and roared to help. Boom! The huge bai, An's body erupted with talisman runes. It flapped its wings and brought about a talisman storm. Its 3 heads spat out 3 talisman light pillars and swept towards Du Xiaofu like thunder. Just as the bai, An's 3 heads spat out the talisman light pillars, Du Xiaofu's figure disappeared in an instant. Chi! Du Xiaofu's figure turned into a strange and unpredictable golden afterimage. He flew up like a floating god and landed on the bai An's back. Coo! The bai An roared in shock. Its entire body glowed. Dazzling talisman runes covered it densely. A terrifying force erupted and wanted to blast Du Xiaofu away. Behave yourself! Du Xiaofu shouted. Golden light erupted from his body like the sun rising from the east. The aura of the rock's golden wings suppressed the bai An, causing fear to appear in its eyes. Coo, coo, coo. However, the bai An was extraordinary. Its 3 heads could turn 180 degrees. The 3 heads roared at the same time. Talisman runes erupted from its mouth and swept towards Du Xiaofu. Rock's chaos-shattering claw. Du Xiaofu shouted. A claw mark seemed to be able to distort space and landed on the bai An's 3 heads. Whoosh! Under the rock's chaos-shattering claw, the bai An's 3 heads were broken by Du Xiaofu. The 3 heads were separated from their necks. Coo, coo, coo! The bai An's 3 heads, whose necks were broken, could still roar in pain at this moment. The miserable roar shook the sky. It was as if one's soul was about to leave his body. It shook the entire mountain. Whoosh! The headless bai An's wings were still flapping. Talisman runes erupted and swept across the mountain peak. The mountain rocks were shattered and the giant trees were all undulating. It was a terrifying scene. Bang, bang! However, it was only a short time. The light on the huge bai An's body finally dimmed. Then, it fell powerlessly and a large amount of blood splattered. Sigh, what a pity. What a waste of natural resources. What a pity. Du Xiaofu's heart ached when he saw the bai An's blood spurting out. He lifted the bai An's 3 heads and stuck out his tongue to lick them with heartache. The bai An's blood was pure and sweet. Du Xiaofu immediately took out many bottles and jars on his body and began to hurriedly fill them with the bai An's blood. In Du Xiaofu's heart, this was the bai An's blood that was even stronger than the Xinyun scarlet dragon. The bai An's blood could be used by him to cleanse his bones and marrow. The younger generation of the Du family and the Stone City could use it to baptize their foundation or temper themselves. This was a precious treasure that was difficult to find in the outside world. It could not be wasted like this. The dozen or so youths were either sent flying or swept away. All of them were crying for their parents. At this moment, when they saw Du Xiaofu tear off the bai An's head and drink the bai An's blood, they were all shocked. Their eyes changed greatly as they were frightened. He's a demonic beast, not a human. Run! Quickly inform the experts in the family to kill this bastard. The youths looked at each other. They were absolutely shocked by Du Xiaofu and immediately flew into the air. At this moment, these youths ran faster than rabbits and disappeared from the messy mountain peak in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Du Xiaofu completely ignored these youths. He was completely focused on his bai An's blood. Only when the last drop of bai An's blood was squeezed dry did Du Xiaofu feel satisfied. The bai An's flesh should also be a precious treasure. I can't waste it. Du Xiaofu looked around. He didn't know where this place was. The old man and old woman had also ignored him for some reason. He then looked at the Bai An's body on the ground and licked his lips. After a while, on the mountain peak, Du Xiaofu completed a barbecue stove made of huge rocks. He found some firewood, tore off the Bai An's huge wing and leg, and began to barbecue it. Not long after, a fragrant aroma filled the air. The barbecue meat was greasy and even glowed with runes. It fluctuated with energy, making people drool. Du Xiaofu sprinkled spices and salt that he never forgot to bring with him and began to eat the Bai An's meat. Swoosh, swoosh. At this moment, in the distant sky, many figures flew over at lightning speed. Dozens of figures were wrapped in star-like light. Waves of terrifying aura descended like the heavens. The fluctuations of aura made Du Xiaofu, who was sitting on a rock and eating barbecue meat, suddenly raise his head. His eyes secretly fluctuated. Walala! Dozens of figures appeared in the sky. Dozens of pairs of eyes were fixed on Du Xiaofu, who was eating barbecue meat. Looking at the Bai An corpse on the ground and the Bai An wing on the barbecue grill, those pairs of eyes were as complicated as fried dough twists, almost twisting together. Third uncle, it's this guy. He tore apart the Bai An and injured us. This guy is a demonic beast, not a human. He's too fierce. Among the crowd, there were the dozens of youths who left crying for their parents not long ago. At this moment, under the protection of the adults behind them, the fear of Du Xiaofu had lessened significantly. However, on their childish faces, there was still some lingering fear in their eyes. Gugu, however, at this moment, it was unknown whether it was because of the aroma of the barbecue meat, but the dozens of youths secretly stared at the barbecue meat on the barbecue grill. They licked their tongues, swallowed their saliva, and made goo-goo sounds. At this moment, many of the adults also involuntarily glanced at the barbecue meat on the barbecue grill. How dare you? A middle-aged man looked at Du Xiaofu, who was still eating barbecue meat, and finally couldn't help but shout, "Rumble!" The sound waves rolled, and it was as if one could see a substantial sonic boom. The aura covered the sky and the earth and swept across the peak of the mountain. At the peak of the mountain, sand and stones flew, and the mountain trembled. It was soul-shaking. Chi La, Du Xiaofu sat on the rock, and the rock under his but slid back half a foot. However, Du Xiaofu's expression was still calm. He didn't even raise his head after that, and continued to eat his barbecue meat. Kid, you're courting death. Seeing that Du Xiaofu didn't seem to care about him at all, the middle-aged man couldn't suppress his anger. He waved his hand, and his figure pounced on Du Xiaofu. Chi La, the middle-aged man's 5 fingers slightly curled, and an astonishing rune burst out, directly grabbing at Du Xiaofu's head, begging for fresh flowers. Thank you, everyone. Today's update ends. Chapter 759. Qi. Just at that moment, a figure appeared in front of Du Xiaofu out of thin air. A dazzling light spread out. The middle-aged man's claw was forced to move to the side at this moment. It brushed past the light circle and crushed a huge rock not far away. His expression changed drastically at the same time. The light receded, and a seemingly old woman appeared. She looked at the dozens of people in front of her and said, "What do you want?" Numerous gazes looked at the old woman, and their expressions changed. Then, they all became extremely respectful. Old Ming, this servant bullied Chao and the others. He even killed a Tao Wu. He should be killed. The middle-aged man who had just attacked said respectfully to Old Ming, "I brought him back, not a servant. If anything happens to him, you can't bear the responsibility. Go back." Old Ming said softly to the crowd. But Old Ming, an unusually beautiful woman, felt heartache for her child who had been crying for his father and mother earlier. She seemed to want to say something, but was interrupted by Old Ming. He said, "I am the one who brought him back. In that case, I will be responsible for all of you. What do you think?" Hearing this, the beautiful woman's expression instantly changed. "We don't dare. We will leave now." The expressions of the people who came changed secretly. After looking at Du Xiaofu in confusion, they hurriedly left. No one dared to offend Old Ming. Swoosh, swoosh. The dozens of people came quickly and left quickly. After that, they disappeared. Du Xiaofu was still sitting on the rock and eating. He didn't even raise his head. Old Ming looked at the mess around him. His gaze swept past the Tao Wu's corpse and the grill. In the end, it landed on Du Xiaofu's body. His eyes couldn't help but ripple. Old Ming couldn't help but be shocked. Compared to Miss Xiaojing, this guy was too different. They were twins born from the same mother. The younger sister was otherworldly, like a fairy in this world. However, the older brother was ferocious and strong like a wild beast. On the first day he arrived, he dared to eat a Tao Wu and beat up a dozen youths in the clan. When had an outsider dared to be so bold in this place? If news of someone coming here to barbecue a Tao Wu spread, no one in this world would believe that there was such a person. Do you want some? Du Xiaofu finally raised his head and looked at Old Ming's gaze for a long time. He said, "Otherwise, I won't be able to eat if you keep staring at me like this. I don't eat the mortal world, and I don't eat meat." Elder Ming looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Are you full? If you are, let me tell you about Miss Xiaojing first." Du Xiaofu looked at Old Ming with his clear eyes. He nodded and said, "Has my younger sister been well these past few years? Has anyone bullied her here?" Old Ming looked at Du Xiaofu, and after a few breaths, he nodded and said, "Other than her natural illness, Miss Xiaojing should be better off than you. The elders here dote on her very much." That's good, that's good." A slight smile appeared on Du Xiaofu's face when he heard this. "Do you know that Miss Xiaojing was born with a sovereign body?" Old Ming asked. "I don't know much, but I do know that my younger sister is born with a sovereign body. It must be extremely powerful," Du Xiaofu said with a smile. From the images that his drunkard father had given him, he already knew that his younger sister was born with a sovereign body. Old Ming sighed. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "But the young miss was also born with a natural illness. You've never told me. Just what kind of illness is it?" Du Xiaofu looked at Old Ming. He was worried and uneasy. These people were extremely powerful. If they were unable to save his younger sister, it was obvious how serious her illness was. "Miss Xiaojing suffers from the withering heart illness," Old Ming said softly. "Withering heart illness." Du Xiaofu violently trembled when he heard this. A person was born from the brain of his parents. The essence of his body was connected like a ring, and white like silk. The father had 3 elements. The son had 2 kidneys, the son had 2 eyes, and the son had 2 external kidneys. The 3 elements were complete. The 5 viscera, 6 bowels, 4 limbs, and bones were gradually born. Afterwards, the body possessed the energies of the 5 elements, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, to match the 5 viscera. The lungs were metal, the liver was wood, the kidneys were water, the heart was fire, and the temper was earth. The most important part of the body was none other than the head and the 5 viscera. The 5 viscera and the 5 elements of heaven and earth supported each other. The heart was the head of the 5 viscera. The withering heart illness was the head of the 5 viscera. How serious was it? The withering heart illness can be said to be irreversible. The clan had thought of changing Miss Xiaojing's heart, but Miss Xiaojing was born with a sovereign body, whose heart could fuse with a sovereign body. Old Ming sighed softly. He looked at Du Xiaofu and sighed. It's already a miracle that Miss Xiaojing was able to hold on until now. The clan has spent a huge price to nurture her heart, but even so, the situation is becoming more and more serious. It can't be delayed any longer. What do you need me to do? Du Xiaofu asked Old Ming. They had probably already found a way to get him here. Old Ming looked at Du Xiaofu and did not say anything for a long time. He then looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Child, I'll take you to a place right now. You're taking me to see my mother and sister?" Du Xiaofu looked at Old Ming with anticipation and nervousness. Old Ming's gaze was tranquil as he said, "Follow me. You'll know when you get there." A verdant valley, a small bridge over flowing water, an ancient aura fluctuated, exotic flowers and herbs bloomed, and there were even spiritual medicines everywhere. White birds cried in the mountain forest, and spiritual beasts shuttled back and forth. All of them were treasures that could not be seen in the outside world. This was like a fairyland. Du Xiaofu followed Old Ming all the way to a valley. There was a quiet and ancient courtyard in the deep valley. Du Xiaofu had many things to ask along the way, But old Ming did not mention a single word and remained silent. Go in. That's Miss Xiaojing's residence. Old Ming looked at the ancient courtyard before him and said to Du Xiaofu, Sister's residence? Du Xiaofu's eyes moved, and he immediately became slightly flustered in his heart. His feelings were very complicated, and it was as if his feet were tied to a 50,000-pound mountain, making it difficult for him to move. Sister Xiaojing is inside. Is Mother inside? Could it be that I can finally see my mother and sister that I've been thinking about day and night? Du Xiaofu still walked into the courtyard, step by step. His pace was neither fast nor slow, and his body was slightly trembling. Sigh. I've let this child down. Old Ming looked at Du Xiaofu, and from the corner of his eyes, he saw the clear eyes that were slightly moist, and he sighed helplessly. Chi as Du Xiaofu entered the courtyard. A dozen figures arrived from outside the valley. All of them restrained their auras, and then they landed behind Old Ming. There was a total of 11 people, and the one at the front was the old guardian that Old Ming called Qing Yu. But at this moment, the 10 people behind Qing Yu were all middle-aged men in armor. Their armor was covered in runes, and all of them were high-grade Dao artifacts. Old Ming, leave the rest to us. You've already done enough for that brat. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have the qualifications to enter this place. Qing Yu said to Old Ming, Qing Yu, listen to me. He's here to save Miss Xiaojing's life. If you dare to hurt him or make him suffer, don't blame me for taking advantage of my seniority. You should know what I'm capable of. Old Ming's gaze was tightly fixed on Qing Yu's body. Yes, I'm only here to watch over this brat. Before saving Xiaojing, I want to prevent him from causing any trouble. There are still some people in the clan who have other thoughts, so I'm here to protect him. Hearing this, Qing Yu immediately lowered his head and did not dare to look directly at Old Ming. Sigh. I've sinned. I've sinned. No wonder the old patriarch said that it's difficult to sever my mortal heart, and that I'm ultimately unable to take that final step. Old Ming muttered softly. After his voice sounded, he disappeared without a trace. The courtyard was quiet and antique. Du Xiaofu entered the courtyard. The decorations were simple, and there was a faint fragrance that was pleasant. Du Xiaofu turned his head. Old Ming did not follow behind him and walked into one of the rooms. This was a room that looked like a study. However, there were many Dao artifacts, pills, and spiritual herbs placed here. There were energy fluctuations, and multicolored light was emitted. There were many bookshelves on the walls. Du Xiaofu saw many ancient books, and with a single glance, he knew that they were not young. However, there were also many martial skill jade slips and beast bones placed on the bookshelves. None of them were ordinary items. If this was not his sister's residence, Du Xiaofu would have been unable to control his hands and would have taken all of them away. It was hard to imagine that someone would place beast bones, martial skills, and many pills and spiritual herbs in the study. The corners of Du Xiaofu's mouth slightly moved, and a slight smile appeared on his face. Was this his sister's study? He did not know if she usually read or trained in this study. From the looks of it, his sister's personality was not the same as an ordinary girl's. Within the study, Du Xiaofu saw an ancient wooden desk. Many rice papers were neatly arranged on the desk, and there was a portrait on the desk. The portrait was black and white, but when Du Xiaofu's gaze landed on it, his heart immediately trembled fiercely, as if he had been struck by lightning. The portrait was of a man with a resolute face. His slender eyebrows slanted to his temples, and his thick and long eyelashes made his originally rigid and powerful face appear much gentler. Chapter 760. The man in the portrait had a pure smile on his thin lips. Drunkard's father. Du Xiaofu shuddered. The man in the portrait looked much younger than his drunkard's father, but he was definitely his drunkard's father. Du Xiaofu took the portrait and realized that there were 3 other portraits below it. The second portrait was of a woman. This woman was out of this world, proud and independent. She looked like a fairy who had descended from the heavens. This is Mother's portrait. Du Xiaofu's heart trembled once again as if he was struck by lightning. Du Xiaofu had seen the woman in the portrait in the illusory scroll back then. This woman was his mother. In the third portrait, Du Xiaofu saw himself. It was like looking into a mirror. That face, that gaze, nose, and lips were exactly the same. The only difference was that he was wearing a long gown in the portrait. There was no purple gold on his back. In the fourth portrait, Du Xiaofu's heart shuddered again. It was a 17 or 18-year-old woman. Her delicate face looked otherworldly. Her eyes were like stars. Du Xiaofu carefully looked at the woman in the portrait. The woman's facial features were almost exactly the same as his own, yet she was so beautiful. Xiao Jing. Du Xiaofu touched the woman's face in the portrait and murmured. His voice was a little hoarse. Brother from afar, do you know that there is a sister like me? One day, I will leave this place to find you and father. Wait for me. Du Xiaofu saw a line of beautiful words at the back of the portrait. It was signed Xiao Jing. There were many portraits on the old wooden desk. Du Xiaofu looked at them one by one. Most of the portraits were of his drunkard's father, his mother, himself, and his sister, Xiao Jing. He and his sister, Xiao Jing, had the most portraits. They had been drawn since they were 11 or 12 years old. He could tell that the first portrait was very unfamiliar. The two of them were almost exactly the same. On the back of each portrait, there was a line of beautiful words written by his sister. They were all fragments of her life and her longing for her father and brother. I actually have an older brother. Mother told me that I have a twin brother who looks exactly like me. He's with father now. Mother said that when I'm completely healed, I can go find my brother and father. I don't know why, but the people in the clan are not willing to talk about my father and brother. They even said that they don't know what is going on. I'm so happy. Today, Mother drew father. Xiaofu Hai. Xiaofu. 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 He is as I imagined. Xiaofu Hai Xiaofu. 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 Xiaofu Xiaofu Hai. Xiaofu. Xiaofu. Xiaofu Xiaofu Hai. Xiaofu. 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 Xiaofu Xiaofu Hai Xiaofu 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 Lu. I'm 16 this year. My birthday is also my brother's birthday. I have my mother with me, but I don't know if my brother has a father with him. I really want to be together as a family. I even saw mother secretly crying today. I know that mother also misses father and brother. My heart hurts again today. I'm worried that I'm going to die, but I haven't seen my brother or father yet. Big brother, we were born on the same day and are of the same age. People say that big brothers will dote on their little sisters. Will you dote on me in the future? If I make you angry, will you give in to me? Big brother, Dad, where are you now? I miss you so much. I heard that twins have telepathy. I'm thinking of you now. You, who are far away, are you also thinking of me? Or, perhaps you still don't know that you have a little sister here who is thinking of you. On each portrait, there was a line of beautiful words. What was written on it was Xiao Jing's longing, drip, drip. Tears fell onto the fine writing paper, dripping onto the lines of beautiful words. Du Xiaofu's tears streaked across his resolute face, dripping down his cheeks and falling to the ground. His tears soaked the small words on the rice paper as if they were melting Du Xiaofu's heart. At this moment, Du Xiaofu could no longer suppress his emotions. His eyes were filled with hot tears. When love is deep, even men have tears. Not to mention that men don't cry easily. That's when love is not deep. Sister. His voice was wet and hoarse, and his throat was choked. Looking at the beautiful girl in the portrait, Du Xiaofu's heart was trembling. Rumble. Suddenly, the space trembled, and the energy of heaven and earth fluctuated in the courtyard. Talisman array. Du Xiaofu's spiritual power was released, and his figure disappeared. Outside the courtyard, the energy fluctuation disappeared without a trace. But at this moment, Du Xiaofu looked around him. He could feel that there was an extremely powerful talisman array set up around the courtyard. Once someone touched it, they would immediately suffer a great calamity. Are you trying to trap me? Du Xiaofu looked at the distance of the courtyard. Elder Ming's figure had already disappeared. When the old man appeared outside the courtyard, he had many people wearing armor with him. His aura was very powerful. You don't have the qualifications to trap you. You think too highly of yourself. We're just afraid that you'll cause trouble. Actually, this is for your own good. We're afraid that you'll have an accident before you can save Xiao Jing. This is to protect you. Protector Qing, you looked at Du Xiaofu, who was in front of the courtyard. with a sneer in his eyes, and said, "Brat, don't blame me for not warning you. You'd better not come out. Although this small talisman array is ordinary, with your cultivation, even if you're 100 times stronger, you'll only be asking for trouble if you want to come out. Since you want me to save someone, why do you need to trap me? What do you mean for my own good? If you don't give me an explanation, I'll definitely not be trapped." Du Xiaofu shouted. Everything made Du Xiaofu feel that it was far from what he saw on the surface. Staring at Protector Qingyu, Du Xiaofu said in a deep voice, "Don't tell me that my mother and sister Xiaojing are also trapped here by you?" Explanation? There's no need to explain to an ant like you. Fortunately, the clan didn't kill you and your lowly father. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to save Xiaojing now. Your purpose of living is to save Xiaojing. This is the will of heaven. Protector Qingyu looked at Du Xiaofu and smiled coldly, saying, "As for your mother and Xiaojing, they've always been good, but they're not people you can mention. It won't take long for a lowly child outside to be completely dealt with. This is the will of heaven. Your heart will exist for Xiaojing. When the time comes, Xiaojing will solve the problem and be born supreme, shining brightly in the world." I understand. The withering heart disease requires a change of heart. You need to change my heart. This is the purpose of you bringing me here. Du Xiaofu looked at Protector Qingyu. His heart was in turmoil, and he couldn't calm down. His mind was filled with complicated thoughts, and his body began to tremble. "You're Xiaojing's twin brother. The two of you were born from the same womb and are connected by blood. There's an 80% chance that your heart will be given to Xiaojing." Protector Qingyu looked at Du Xiaofu and said coldly, "When the time comes, you shouldn't exist in this world." Du Xiaofu's body trembled. His thoughts were in a mess. He thought that he would be able to see his mother and sister, whom he had been thinking about day and night. But it turned out that his purpose of coming here was only because they wanted his heart. 10 years ago, he walked out of Stone City, stepped into the dark forest, entered Tianwu Academy, barged through the Stone Dragon Empire's Dragon City, swept through the dark forest, stepped into the Central Plains, and finally entered the ancient Heaven Sect. He defeated all his enemies along the way, all for the day when he could enjoy his mother's love, see his sister, and reunite with his family. And now, he had come to the place that he had been thinking about day and night. He thought that he would be able to see his sister in advance just because he couldn't find her. Only now did he realize that this was a dead end for the other party. They wanted his heart to save his sister. If they wanted his heart, he would have to die. Did his mother know? Did his sister know? Du Xiaofu's heart was filled with complicated feelings. He also felt an inexplicable sense of loss. Your heart is the reason why you stayed in this world. I'll tell you everything that should be told so that an ant like you can give up on other thoughts. Don't think about some things that you can only dream about. It's just a daydream. Qingyu sneered. It wouldn't be long before this pile of stains that couldn't be wiped clean would be completely cleaned. Du Xiaofu raised his head. The golden light in his eyes suddenly blazed. He stared at Qingyu and shouted, "I want to see my mother and sister now. As long as they ask, my heart won't be able to reach the apex. But if you bully me, coax me, or lie to me, I won't let you off." Childish ant who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You don't even know where you are. This isn't a place where ordinary people and ants like you can stir up waves. Looking at Du Xiaofu's fluttering hair and burning eyes, Qingyu's face was filled with disdain. "I don't care who you are. If you bully me, lie to me, or hurt my family, I'll flatten you even if you're the earth. Even if you're the sky, I'll pierce through it." Du Xiaofu roared like a beast. Golden light shot out from his eyes. The sharpness in his eyes was monstrous. Looking at Du Xiaofu's current appearance, Qingyu's eyes trembled. He felt as if he was looking at the cub of a peerless, ferocious beast, which made him feel uneasy. But Qingyu didn't take it to heart. He was just an ant that was about to die. The outcome was already decided. 2 chapters in a row. It's hard to write these 2 chapters separately. I'm afraid that I won't be able to find that feeling, so I've put them in a row now. I hope that everyone can feel something from these 2 chapters. Little Yu continued to write and once again asked for fresh flowers to thank everyone. Chapter 761. Du Xiaofu's wrath, there's no need to talk to you. You already know enough. Qingyu did not say anything else. He waved his hand at the 10 men behind him and said, "You guys keep an eye on this kid. If anything goes wrong, you will be held responsible." As soon as he finished speaking, Qingyu left and disappeared in an instant. The auras of the 10 middle-aged men fluctuated as they stared at Du Xiaofu. Some of them were curious, but most of them were fierce. Crash! At this moment, in front of the courtyard, a dazzling golden light ignored the array and rushed out. The golden light was like a 5-fingered mountain with golden talisman runes flashing. As the space fluctuated, a strange energy seemed to be able to distort the void. Within the 5-fingered mountain, a golden figure like a flash of golden lightning appeared outside the array in the courtyard. The golden mountain disappeared and Du Xiaofu's figure appeared. Looking at Du Xiaofu's figure and sensing the terrifying and domineering aura of the golden mountain phantom, the 10 men in battle armor were stunned. All of this was beyond the imagination of the 10 men in armor. The purple-robed young man was able to ignore the array and appeared in front of them. This was too unbelievable. Go back or be suppressed. While the 10 men were shocked, they moved together and runes burst out from their armor. The armor was a middle-grade Dao artifact. Its aura was majestic and suppressed Du Xiaofu. Boom! The 10 men were wearing middle-grade Dao artifact armors, and their cultivation was at the complete Martial King realm. The 10 complete Martial King realm cultivators were just servants in this place. Get out of the way, or be killed. Du Xiaofu was fearless. His heart was raging like a volcano that was about to erupt. These people bullied him, tricked him, trapped him, and wanted to kill him. How could he allow himself to be captured? Suppress. One of the men in armor did not say much. They were ordered to guard and could not afford to lose. Otherwise, the consequences would be severe. As soon as he finished speaking, the man in armor waved his hand and dazzling runes burst out from his armor. The aura of a complete Martial King realm cultivator burst out. He clenched his fist and directly suppressed Du Xiaofu. Mysterious soul eye. Du Xiaofu made his move. Runes burst out from his eyes and directly covered the man in armor. At the same time, he waved his hand and a green and red light burst out, a sword radiance. Swish! The man in armor's eyes. When he recovered, the sword radiance burst out from his mouth. Only that part of his mouth was not covered. The sword radiance. The sword radiance burst out from his mouth. Bang! Golden sword light began to overflow from the armored warrior's mouth. His head exploded, and blood gushed out. Then, his body went limp and fell to the ground. The man in armor was a complete Martial King realm cultivator. He was protected by a medium Taoist armor. Even a Martial Royal realm cultivator from the outside world would find it difficult to kill them. But now, Du Xiaofu's sword radiance had pierced through the weakest part of his armor and killed him directly. Oh no! Let's join forces to suppress him. The remaining 9 people did not take it seriously and were not too worried. When they saw one of their companions being killed directly, they were shocked. At the same time, the 9 of them changed their expressions and attacked at the same time. The 9 of them attacked. 9 of them were in the complete Martial King realm. At least 3 of them were at the peak of the complete Martial King realm. They were one step away from the Martial Royal realm. Qingyu asked them to guard here, not to guard Du Xiaofu. He just asked them to guard this place so that others would not dare to act rashly. The news of Du Xiaofu's arrival in the clan was sealed. Not many people knew about it. However, the clansmen who knew about it were extremely sensitive. Although they had not acted rashly, he had to pay attention to them. As for Du Xiaofu, Qingyu was not worried at all as he was in the talisman array. Although the talisman array was just a small one, it was enough to trap a Martial Royal Realm consummation cultivator in the outside world. However, Qingyu did not expect that an ordinary talisman array would not have much effect on Du Xiaofu. Boom! The 9 complete Martial King Realm cultivators attacked at the same time. The terrifying aura was extremely terrifying. Light shone brightly and the armor's runes were dazzling. It was like a sun in the sky. The pressure was strong and surging. You bullied me and trapped my family here. You have gone too far. Du Xiaofu shouted loudly as a cold aura shot into the heavens. Golden light erupted from his clear eyes, as if a golden-winged rock had appeared. The golden light from the runes within his body spread out like a rising sun, and a pair of talisman rune wings that glittered with golden light extended from his back. Boom! At this moment, an overbearing and fierce aura suddenly swept out from Du Xiaofu's body. The wings flapped and light overflowed. Magnificent light filled the sky. Rock descends to the ninth heaven. Furious sword slashes the sun. Holy sword roar. Tyrannical shadow change. Golden light bloomed in the sky. The rock flapped its wings and soared to the ninth heaven, sweeping across the sky. The overbearing and terrifying aura overflowed and suppressed everything. The azure gold light shone brightly. The sword radiance spread out at lightning speed. Layers of golden light bloomed. The dazzling azure gold runes bloomed. The aura was domineering and terrifying. The sword radiance was like a dragon soaring into the sky. It was like a rock flying in the sky. It contained the power to move mountains and seas. It could shake mountains and rivers, make mountains collapse and the earth crack. It could destroy everything. Du Xiaofu soared into the sky and bathed in golden light. He was the only one who could suppress everything. Rumble. The rumbling sound in the valley was so loud that it reached the sky. It made the space tremble. A series of dazzling runes burst out. In the earth-shattering sound, it was as if the valley was about to be shattered. Puff, puff, puff. The armored figures were sent flying like kites with broken strings. Their mouths were dripping with blood. Bang, bang, bang. Some people's armors cracked and their runes shattered. Some people's mouths were pierced by the sword radiance. Their heads exploded in their armors. Out of the 9 martial king realm experts, 5 of them were severely injured and 4 of them were killed. Du Xiaofu stood in the air. The rune wings on his back were shining with golden light. He was like a golden-winged rock flying across the sky. The azure gold sword whip in his hand was like a dragon. It surrounded Du Xiaogong's body and was dazzling. It was so cool that it moved people's souls. The remaining 5 people looked at Du Xiaofu with pale faces. His terrifying aura was like that of a supreme demonic beast. It made their hearts tremble. Inform the experts. We are no match for this young man. One of the 5 people exclaimed. Then, 5 figures soared into the sky and tried to escape. Stay! Du Xiaofu shouted. The tyrant shadow sword whip in his hand swept across the sky. It was like a dragon flying across the sky. It wrapped around one of the armored figures. The armored man's eyes were filled with shock. Just as he was about to use all his strength to break free, a fist ruthlessly swept across his back. Bang! With a dull thud, blood spurted out of the armored warrior's mouth and his body staggered forward. Bang! But then, another golden fist landed on his head like a ghost. His mouth was dripping with blood, and his head was buzzing. If it wasn't for the protection of the helmet on his head, that punch would have been enough to blow his head apart. Puff! The armored man suffered a heavy blow, and his body fell from the mountain peak, causing the ground to shake. Then, Du Xiaofu restrained him, and the armor on his body began to turn into runes and retreated into his body. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The other 4 armored warriors took the opportunity to escape and instantly flew into the distance. Take me to Shaojing, Du Xiaofu shouted as he captured the middle-aged man in his hand. His eyes were filled with coldness. The middle-aged man didn't speak. He was waiting for the experts to come to his rescue. If you don't speak, I have my ways. Du Xiaofu was angry. He waved his sword and the tyrant shadow burst out with golden light, cutting off the middle-aged man's shoulder. Blood spurted out. Ah! The middle-aged man screamed in pain. The pain of losing an arm had nothing to do with one's cultivation. It was just as painful. Swish! The tyrant shadow slashed again and cut off the middle-aged man's ear. Blood spurted out. Spare me, where Miss Shaojing is, that is the main place of the clan. We are servants. We can't enter without permission. The middle-aged man begged loudly. He didn't dare to remain silent. The young man in front of him was too cruel. Take me there. Du Xiaofu shouted, and the tyrant shadow slashed again. The middle-aged man's other ear was cut off, and he screamed in pain. Spare me. I'll take you there. The middle-aged man begged. This young man was too cruel. If he didn't go, he would be killed immediately. Du Xiaofu picked up the middle-aged man from the ground and flapped his wings. He flew forward under the middle-aged man's guidance. This space was boundless. He didn't know how big it was. It was like another vast world. Now that he had come to this dangerous place, Du Xiaofu simply let go of everything. No matter what, he had to see his mother and sister today. Du Xiaofu was fearless as he carried the middle-aged man. In this space, the energy of heaven and earth was rich. There were strange flowers and grass, auspicious beasts and auspicious clouds. It was a paradise. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu turned around and saw a large number of flowing lights flying towards him from the sky, their auras fluctuating fiercely. "You can't escape. Let me go. You can't escape." The middle-aged man was overjoyed when he saw someone coming from behind him. "Lead the way." Du Xiaofu squeezed the middle-aged man's shoulder and pierced it. Blood seeped out. "In front. It's in front." The middle-aged man howled in pain and quickly led the way. Whoosh! The golden rune wings on Du Xiaofu's back flapped as he rushed forward with all his strength. His eyes were glowing with a golden light, and there was a hint of redness in them as he shouted, "Mother, sister, I'm here to find you. Where are you?" His voice trembled and reverberated in the sky along with his Xian Qi. It shook the mountain and echoed endlessly. "Mother, sister, I'm here to find you. Come out." Du Xiaofu kept shouting, hoping that in this vast space, the two people he had been thinking about day and night could hear him. He had dreamed, but the two people in his dream were also hazy and blurry. "Mother, sister, I'm here to find you." Du Xiaofu carried the middle-aged man and flapped his wings. His eyes were blurred and his voice rolled, startling the white bird and auspicious beast. Today's update is complete. Chapter 762. In this deadly situation, Du Xiaofu wanted to see the two people he thought about day and night. He longed for them and didn't want to regret. Swoosh! In the air, there were bright rainbows that emitted a powerful aura. Many silhouettes rushed over at lightning speed, chasing after Du Xiaofu. Roar! The roars of demonic beasts resounded through the air. Many ferocious beasts flew across the sky and surrounded Du Xiaofu. They wanted to trap Du Xiaofu. "Mother, where are you? I'm coming to find you." "Sister, where are you? I'm coming to find you." Du Xiaofu shouted loudly. He was not unfamiliar with the words in his mind. He shouted them loudly and repeatedly. It was heart-wrenching. His hoarse voice shook the clouds like muffled thunder, causing the hearts of those who heard it to tremble for no reason. "Stop, otherwise I'll kill you." Waves of shouts and yells surrounded Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu flapped his wings, and his eyes shone with golden light. He held the middle-aged man in his hand and looked at the mountain peak in front of him. There was a wave of energy there. It was a terrifying, formless array. Once it was touched, the consequences would be severe. "You brought me into this predicament?" Du Xiaofu shouted at the middle-aged man. This place was already a predicament. The middle-aged man purposely brought him into this predicament. "Surrender. Otherwise, you'll be killed on the spot. You won't be able to escape," the middle-aged man said loudly. His voice was trembling. He naturally didn't dare to bring this young man to the main area of the clan. If he did, he would die without a doubt. This was a remote area of the clan. Once he arrived here, he would be surrounded. This young man had no way to escape. "You're trying to trick me? You deserve to die," Du Xiaofu shouted loudly. With a wave of his hand, he lifted the middle-aged man in his hand and violently threw him onto a towering mountain peak. Bang! Bang! The enormous rock at the peak of the mountain cracked apart and exploded, causing the earth to quake and the mountain to shake. The middle-aged man that was restrained by the restriction sprayed blood violently from the fall, and his body had already transformed into meat paste as he breathed his last. Du Xiaofu's body landed on the peak of the mountain. His feet touched the ground, and a golden light erupted from his body. His domineering aura swept out, and his eyes were filled with coldness. Whoosh whoosh, densely packed figures appeared all around the mountain peak. Terrifying auras were all locked onto Du Xiaofu. Many of them were clad in armor, and their auras were at the martial royal realm. There were many terrifying birds and ferocious beasts, all of which were rare to see in the outside world. Not all of them had the terrifying aura of a beast emperor. There were also quite a number of terrifying auras locked onto the surroundings. At this moment, there seemed to be many obscure auras on the surrounding mountain peaks. Many figures had descended on the mountain peaks in the distance. Looking at the countless terrifying auras in the surroundings, Du Xiaofu looked up at the clouds, and a golden light spread out from his eyes. His emotions were complicated, and his eyes were red and hazy. "Mother, sister, I'm here. Where are you?" His voice was trembling and hoarse, and it was hysterical and full of emotions. It shook the clouds, but it did not elicit any response. In the ancient and vast space, energy fluctuations were like countless energy snakes shuttling back and forth. A 17 or 18-year-old girl was sitting cross-legged, and she looked otherworldly. Her tightly shut eyes suddenly opened, and a bright light shot out from them. Her eyes were red for no reason. "Why do I feel so uncomfortable and cry?" the girl murmured softly, and her delicate body trembled slightly. There was an inexplicable feeling that made her heart ache and uncomfortable, as if it was being cut by a knife. Roar! In the sky above the mountain peak, a terrifying white-scaled python, which was powerful and ferocious, let out a terrifying roar like a lion's roar. Its huge body swept towards Du Xiaofu. The terrifying white-scaled python opened its bloody mouth and spat out scarlet runes. Cold air rolled out, and the runes soared into the sky, directly shooting towards Du Xiaofu, wanting to suppress Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu shouted, and a dazzling golden light burst out from his body. His eyes were full of golden runes. Kill! Instead of retreating, Du Xiaofu stepped on the ground and leaped into the air. His 5 fingers were slightly bent, and he directly grabbed towards the white-scaled python. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's aura was like that of a peerless beast. Rock chaos shattering claw. The mysterious runes on his fingertips flickered, as if they wanted to tear the space apart. Energy ripples visible to the naked eye spread out from the claw. The incomparably domineering aura suppressed tens of thousands of beasts. Golden light burst out from his claws, and the dazzling mysterious runes were like golden lightning wreaking havoc. It was as if a golden-winged rock was about to spread its wings and soar into the 9 heavens. Such a domineering and terrifying aura burst out, and it immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding people. Many ferocious beasts were trembling. That was the supreme aura of the golden-winged rock. Chi. Under the terrifying claw, a domineering aura descended and collided with the white-scaled python. It was as if countless golden lightning snakes swept out in an incomparably domineering manner, fiercely sweeping across the sky. The rock chaos shattering claw was undoubtedly more powerful than the sky-shaking wings. Chi. The terrifying claw fell, but the white-scaled python was definitely not weak. The aura of the peak of the complete Beast King realm burst out, and it was very powerful. Bang bang! The runes all over the sky were shattered, and a terrifying energy storm spread out in an arc in the air. Chi. Under the claw, the white-scaled python's huge body was forced back, and Du Xiaofu's body was also forced back in the air. The two seemed to be evenly matched, but in fact, the white-scaled python was at a disadvantage. Several claw marks appeared on its ferocious head, and blood flowed out. Roar! The strange beasts roared, shaking the sky. In the next moment, several powerful and huge demonic beasts, like dark clouds covering the sky and moving mountains, pressed toward Du Xiaofu together. Roar! Waves of terrifying beasts swept across the sky, suppressing Du Xiaofu together. The vicious birds flapped their wings, and the vicious beasts roared and brandished their claws. At the same time, the golden rune wings on Du Xiaofu's back suddenly turned into a golden vortex of light. An incomparably domineering aura swept across, and golden light suddenly burst out from the golden vortex, shooting into the sky. It was as if a sun was about to rise, shining brightly, like a sea of golden clouds rippling. The golden light soared into the sky, and the domineering aura descended from the sky. Many people were shocked. They saw a pair of golden wings spread out from Du Xiaofu's back again, and golden light flowed. The golden wings spread out, and a golden blazing radiance was emitted. A huge golden-winged rock phantom then spread its wings and soared into the sky. Screech! The golden-winged rock screeched, and the sound waves pierced through the clouds. Its wings spread out and covered the sky, and its ferocious aura spread out, causing the entire space to tremble. What a powerful aura! That's the golden-winged rock. The real golden-winged rock. Is that kid a human or a golden-winged rock? Someone from the golden-winged rock clan has come to our clan? Some people were shocked, and their eyes trembled. Many obscure auras fluctuated in the distance. Why does he have the aura of the golden-winged rock on him? Strange. Strange. Could it be related to the golden-winged rock clan? In the distance, many people murmured softly. They seemed to know something, but they didn't approach. They didn't want to interfere, and didn't want to show themselves. They just watched from afar. As the golden-winged rock phantom appeared, the majestic and domineering aura also rose directly, like a volcanic eruption. That terrifying tyrannical aura caused the numerous ferocious birds and ferocious beasts surrounding Du Xiaofu to tremble violently. This was a kind of innate pressure. Rock descends to the 9 heavens. Suppress, Du Xiaofu shouted, and the golden-winged rock phantom behind him looked down on the world, flapping its wings to suppress all living things. In this space, the sky was filled with golden light, and the earth rumbled. The continuous mountain peaks trembled endlessly, and it was shocking to the soul. In the air, the purple-robed youth was wrapped in golden light. His body was straight, and the golden wings on his back stretched out like a rock spreading its wings. The purple-robed youth's entire body released an endless and majestic domineering aura, as if he was going to soar into the sky. I am the peak of the mountain, and I am the ruler of all beasts. Break. Du Xiaofu's shout was like thunder. His eyes opened, and golden light shot out, like 2 suns illuminating the sky, looking down on the world. The golden-winged rock wings on his back flapped, as if a real golden-winged rock had descended. Everything was like a miracle, and a supreme aura filled the air, suppressing the world. Rumble. Under such a terrifying aura, the runes surged, rising and falling like the ocean. The domineering and terrifying aura caused the space to rumble, as if it wanted to turn the world upside down. Puff, puff, puff. The terrifying, ferocious beasts surrounding Du Xiaofu all spat out blood, and their huge bodies were forced to retreat. Roar. At this moment, the surrounding ferocious beasts in the sky hissed and roared. Under the terrifying aura, they trembled in the face of the golden-winged rock phantom in the sky. He is only at the mysterious level of the martial king realm, but he has such strength. Are the people in the outside world so terrifying now? Or is it because he has the blood of our clan in his body that he is so powerful? Someone murmured in the obscure aura in the distance. That aura is almost the same as that of the real golden-winged rock clan. Is he really related to the golden-winged rock clan, or did he just get a great opportunity? In the obscure aura in the distance, there were whispers of shock. The surrounding ferocious beasts retreated, and no one dared to approach. They all prostrated and trembled. The golden-winged rock phantom behind him disappeared, and Du Xiaofu's tall golden figure stepped into the air. The domineering aura on his body spread, causing the world to tremble. Chapter 763. Mother, sister, where are you? Du Xiaofu raised his head and shouted again, calling for his mother and sister. Everyone who heard him was moved. How dare you? Suppress him. A middle-aged man in armor flew across the sky. His face was gloomy, and his aura of a beginner martial emperor exploded. The man condensed a palm print, and it was as if a strange beast was pouncing. A terrifying aura surged and swept towards Du Xiaofu. Roar. It was also at this moment that a shout that was like the roar of a dragon in the 9 heavens and the long cry of a divine elephant sounded out from Du Xiaofu's mouth, causing the talisman markings to emit fluctuations before transforming into a palm print that was like a bolt of lightning. Buzz. Buddhist chants rang out as mysterious symbols streaked across the sky. Space violently trembled as overbearingness surged. In a flash, two palm imprints suddenly and heavily smashed against each other. A thunderous, muffled sound of energy instantly resounded in this world. Rumble. A large number of dazzling runes shattered, and a terrifying energy ripple swept out like a stormy sea. The impact caused the mountains below to shake and countless boulders to fall and shatter. Dang dang, Du Xiaofu's body was pushed back. The golden wings on his back flapped. When he stabilized his body, there was some golden blood flowing out of his mouth. The middle-aged martial emperor was also pushed back. His face became more and more ugly. Let's join forces and capture this kid. Several loud shouts were heard. Several martial emperors in armor stepped out. Among them, there was a terrifying aura of a martial emperor. Several martial emperors stepped out. The air around them cracked and spread far away. Someone waved his sword. It was a high-grade Taoist artifact. When he waved his sword, wind and thunder roared. Someone threw a punch. His fist was covered in runes. Light overflowed and clanged, shaking the sky. Someone's palm print covered the sky and runes exploded. His aura was domineering. Several martial emperors attacked at the same time. They activated their attacks, and the energy suppressed the nine heavens. This terrifying energy seemed to want to shatter the space and suppress the heavens and the earth. Boom! Terrifying energy burst forth in the end. Endless runes erupted and swept through everything. Poochie Poochie. Du Xiaofu was finally defeated. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body fell on a mountain peak. The mountain trembled, and the boulders cracked and exploded. With the golden rock wings, Du Xiaofu was unable to contend against several martial royal realm experts, especially those above the mysterious level of the martial royal realm. On the mountain peak, Du Xiaofu struggled to get up. His purple robe was in tatters, and his hair was flying in the wind. Faint golden blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were golden and sharp, as if he was a ferocious beast in a desperate situation. In the end, he's just a martial king. He has some abilities, but he can't cause any big waves. A few middle-aged men wearing armors flew up into the sky with smiles on their faces. The mysterious martial emperor realm would not be able to cause any trouble after all. Du Xiaofu looked at the densely packed figures around him and felt that their auras were locked on him. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve and murmured, "Is this a sure-kill situation? But I'm not a fish on the chopping block." After murmuring those words, Du Xiaofu took out the Xinyuan elixir and Berserker elixir and stuffed them into his mouth. Du Xiaofu activated his cultivation method and refined the energy. Faint golden runes started to flicker on the surface of his body. Then, Du Xiaofu put down the purple gold, heavenly sword that he had been carrying on his back. The tip of the sword fell on the ground, causing the entire mountain peak to tremble. Faint cracks started to spread. Seeing that Du Xiaofu's actions were rather strange, the few martial emperors surrounding Du Xiaofu immediately looked at Du Xiaofu in surprise. Many of them stopped in their tracks. Du Xiaofu held the purple gold heavenly sword hilt that was wrapped in purple cloth. As his aura rose, he started to channel his qi into it. Boom! Just as Du Xiaofu's qi was channeled into the purple gold heavenly sword hilt, the mountain peak suddenly trembled violently. Cracks started to appear all of a sudden. Then, in this part of the world, the spatial energy started to gather continuously. Buzz buzz! On the mountain peak, within the purple gold heavenly sword that was wrapped in purple cloth, a dazzling light seeped out like a divine light. The light spread through the runes. The light became more and more dazzling. Faint roars of dragons, tigers, birds, and turtles resounded in this part of the world. At the same time, under the tip of the purple gold heavenly sword, the entire huge mountain peak started to shake. A large area of the mountain peak started to crack. Cracks appeared on the surface of the mountain peak one after another, like a spider web. Then, it collapsed with a loud bang. Rumble. Huge rocks rolled down and exploded. Under the many trembling gazes, the huge mountain peak actually split into pieces and collapsed with a loud bang. At this moment, within this part of the world, countless obscure auras were also trembling. The mountain peak collapsed. Du Xiaofu stood in the air. The golden rock wings on his back continued to expand, bursting with golden light. He held the purple-gold heavenly sword tightly in his hand. Roar! The strange roars of dragons, tigers, phoenixes, and turtles became louder and louder. It shook one's soul, accompanied by bursts of wind and thunder. It was as if ghosts were crying and gods were howling from the void. Everyone's eyes trembled as they looked at Du Xiaofu. Everyone could feel that there was a terrifying aura that was about to burst out from that tall and straight body. I will not let this go. Looking around, Du Xiaofu stepped into the air. With a wave of his hand, the purple cloth on the purple-gold heavenly sword in his hand turned into ashes and dissipated. Woo-woo! At this moment, as the sky was filled with purple-gold light, the purple-gold heavenly sword appeared. The god of weapons was peerless in the sky. Dazzling talisman runes shot up from the purple-gold heavenly sword into the sky. A dazzling light erupted like a suppressed volcano. In this part of the world, there were bursts of wind and thunder. Ghosts were crying and gods were howling, as if there were gods and demons roaring. Rumble! The murderous aura swept out. Heaven and earth trembled violently. The surrounding space distorted and exploded. The terrifying scene was as if destruction was coming. The surrounding beasts trembled. Their gazes landed on the purple-gold heavenly sword in Du Xiaofu's hand, as if they had been electrocuted. That terrifying divine weapon was entirely purple-gold. It had the bones of a tiger and the body of a dragon. It was like a heavenly phoenix spreading its wings and soaring into the sky. It was like a red phoenix rising in the morning sun, sweeping across the 9 heavens. You all bullied me, coaxed me, and trapped my loved ones. Die! Du Xiaofu attacked. He waved the purple-gold heavenly sword in his hand. Streaks of sword radiance wreaked havoc in the sky like thunder. Roar! The peerless divine weapon appeared. The dragon roared and the turtle roared. The terrifying sword radiance swept across the sky. The surrounding mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. A terrifying aura descended in the entire space, making one's soul tremble. Swish! The sword radiance swept out like purple-gold heavenly thunder. A martial royal realm cultivator used a high-grade Taoist weapon to block it. However, it was destroyed by the purple-gold sword radiance. Then, his body was wrapped in murderous aura and killed on the spot. Even if you are the sky, I will pierce through it today. I will not be bullied. Die. In the terrifying blood-red eyes, monstrous murderous aura swept across the sky. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's body was surging with murderous aura. It was as if a peerless demon had awakened and was looking down on the world. It was enough to destroy everything. The peerless divine weapon in his hand slashed out again. The appearance of such a sword radiance shook this part of the world. A martial royal realm cultivator at the mysterious level crushed the purple-gold sword radiance with a spatial rune claw print and resisted the terrifying sword radiance. Whoosh! At this moment, the terrifying murderous aura in the purple-gold heavenly palace rippled crazily and devoured the surrounding energy of heaven and earth. It also directly swallowed the energy on the claw of the martial emperor realm mysterious level cultivator. The murderous aura swept out like a hurricane, as if it came from the 9 hells and the demon realm. It crushed the former ruthlessly. The martial royal realm cultivator in armor spurted out a mouthful of blood when the murderous aura entered his body. His claw was immediately shattered, and the terrifying purple-gold sword light landed directly on his shoulder. Crack, crack! The sword light struck the heavens and the earth, splitting open the sky. The high-grade Dao artifact armor shattered inch by inch like tofu, and his body was instantly split into 2 halves by the sword, killing 2 martial royals with 2 swords. When he was in Tianwu Academy, Du Xiaofu could kill martial royals with the purple-gold heavenly palace. Now that he was in the mysterious martial king realm, Du Xiaofu could kill martial royals with ease after consuming the berserker pill. However, at this moment, Du Xiaofu let out a painful groan from his throat. The murderous aura in the purple-gold heavenly palace was like a flood that had opened the floodgates. The terrifying murderous aura surged and poured out for thousands of miles. Du Xiaofu's soul and body were on the verge of shattering. The honorable weapon had told Du Xiaofu not to use the purple gold heavenly palace. Otherwise, he would not be able to control it. However, Du Xiaofu had been forced to use it when Tianwu Academy was destroyed. Now, in this deadly situation, Du Xiaofu had no choice but to use it again. Divine weapon. It must be a divine weapon. Sacred weapon. Could it be a sacred weapon? The hidden aura on the surrounding mountains could not help but fluctuate violently. Countless murderous auras shot out from the surface of their bodies as if their bodies were about to explode. Kill. Du Xiaofu's face contorted in pain. He could only grit his teeth and resist. He circulated the golden-winged rock cultivation technique in his body to suppress the murderous aura. At the same time, he continued to attack and release the murderous aura. The purple gold sword radiance pierced through the sky and killed another martial royal realm cultivator. The aftershock of the attack caused the mountains below to explode. Hurry up and suppress it together. The next one will be here soon. Continue to attack. Continue. Chapter 764. Let's work together to suppress him. In the surrounding sky, there were densely packed armored men flying out together. There were no less than 100 of them, and all of them were at the martial royal realm. A large group of martial royal realm cultivators attacked. Talisman energy filled the air and talisman runes shot up to the sky to suppress Du Xiaofu. Kill! Du Xiaofu shouted. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with murderous aura. His murderous aura swept across the sky, and he slashed out with the purple gold heavenly tower in his hand. Swish! The sword radiance turned into a thunderous purple gold light. The murderous aura swept out like a hurricane, containing the power of dragons and tigers. An armored martial royal realm cultivator only managed to block the attack for a moment before he was crushed into pieces. Kill! Du Xiaofu attacked ferociously. He was like a ferocious beast. His sword chi destroyed everything. Swish! Another armored martial royal realm cultivator was slashed into pieces by the sword radiance. He turned into a mist of blood and scattered in the air. The martial king realm was mysterious. Now, he was killing martial royal realm cultivators. It was terrifying. Bang! A terrifying spear pierced through the air and turned into a dazzling talisman light. It appeared behind Du Xiaofu with a clanging sound. Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, the terrifying spear pierced into Du Xiaofu's back. Swish! Blood flowed out of Du Xiaofu's back. The spear was a high-grade Dao artifact. Its energy poured out, causing Du Xiaofu to vomit blood. Break! At this moment, Du Xiaofu turned around and slashed at the spear with his sword. The spear was hit. Silver light scattered and sparks flew. It turned into two pieces. The clanging sound was endless. Kill! Lightning flashed as Du Xiaofu activated the lightning finger. It landed on the armored martial royal realm cultivator's face. Swish! The martial royal realm expert did not expect Du Xiaofu to not dodge at all. In his panic, he was unable to dodge. The finger lightning pierced through his face. The head of the martial lord realm armored cultivator exploded within the helmet. Half of the spear was stabbed into Du Xiaofu's back, causing blood to flow out. Du Xiaofu was fearless. He waved the purple gold heavenly tower in his hand again, and the sword radiance seemed to cut through the void. The cries of ghosts and the howls of gods resounded in all directions. Another martial royal realm cultivator was killed on the spot. Bang! A stream of fist imprints fiercely landed on Du Xiaofu's chest like a thunderbolt, causing Du Xiaofu's mouth to drip with blood. Du Xiaofu's resolute and determined face was already pale and sinister. The corner of his mouth held a cruel and cold arc kill. The purple gold heavenly false sword into the sky. Birds and turtles cried out, as if an exceptional demon god was awakening, destroying everything. Swish! The martial royal realm cultivator hit Du Xiaofu's fist, but he was immediately suppressed by the sword radiance. His eyes were filled with fear and his pupils constricted. He was unwilling to be killed, and blood splattered in the sky. This was a battle of a trapped beast. Du Xiaofu was like a trapped beast, struggling with all his might without caring about the consequences. One by one, The martial royal realm experts were killed on the spot. Gulp. Sounds of saliva being swallowed involuntarily could be heard from the throats of the surrounding people. The youth in the purple robe was so ferocious that it sent chills down their spines. Bang, bang, bang. Several people joined forces, and several terrifying attacks swept over Du Xiaofu's body. The entire space seemed to be about to explode. Poof! Du Xiaofu's blood splattered and his body fell from the sky. He was blasted into the messy peaks below like a meteorite. The rocks exploded and the gravel shot out. Du Xiaofu's body was buried in the gravel. Swish! Everyone looked on with trembling eyes. The youth in the purple robe shot up into the sky like a demon from the gravel. The youth in the purple robe was covered in blood. His face was pale and his face was as ferocious as a beast's. However, the youth in the purple robe was still filled with killing intent. The golden rock wings on his back were still releasing golden light, like a sun in the sky. He can still stand up. What a terrifying body. Is that guy a real golden-winged rock? Someone was shocked. The youth in the purple robe's body was also terrifyingly strong. He had withstood the attacks of the martial royal realm cultivators. It was shocking that he could still stand up after that attack. Suppress him with all your might. Attack with all your might. Several martial royal realm armored cultivators surrounded Du Xiaofu again. Terrifying attacks swept over. They activated their beast energy, weapons, palm prints, and fist prints, trying to suppress Du Xiaofu completely. Kill. His blood-red eyes were filled with killing intent. His face was as ferocious as a demon's. Killing intent shot up into the sky. Du Xiaofu opened his mouth and stuffed most of the elixirs and spiritual medicine into it. At this moment, all the qi in Du Xiaofu's divine watchtower was poured into the purple-gold heavenly palace. Oh woo! At this moment, the azure dragon's shadow soared into the sky. The white tiger's shadow entrenched itself. The phoenix's shadow flapped its wings, and the black tortoise's shadow suppressed the heavens and the earth, accompanied by the roars of the gods and demons. Rumble. The roars of dragons and tigers, the cries of birds and tortoises. The sky was filled with thunder and runes. Puff, puff, puff. One by one, the martial royal realm armored cultivators were sent flying. Some of their armored cultivators cracked, some were drenched in blood, and some were directly turned into a bloody mist. Bang! Du Xiaofu's body fell into the messy mountain peak below again, causing the huge rocks to crack and the mountain peak to explode. Under everyone's gaze, the youth in the purple robe got up again. However, his body was also cracking, as if it was about to break open at any time. Blood spurted out from the broken spear on his back. His face was as ferocious as a demon's. Continue. If you want to kill me, then you have to pay the price. Du Xiaofu roared with his head held high. The purple-gold heavenly palace pointed to the sky. What a terrifying youth. This guy is still young. One day, he will definitely shock the world. It's too terrifying. Murmurs and astonished voices spread far and wide. The youth in the purple robe was like a demon, a peerless, ferocious beast. He was extremely powerful and wanted to kill the world. Swoosh, swoosh. Again, many figures flew into the sky and appeared in the sky. They wanted to continue suppressing Du Xiaofu. All of you, back off. Suddenly, a voice was heard. It was gentle and slowly spread in all directions. As the voice was heard, a ray of light appeared in the sky. The light was auspicious, and a terrifying aura permeated the heavens and the earth. A figure appeared in the sky. The light was as dazzling as the stars. One could vaguely see the figure in the sky. As the figure appeared, the surrounding figures bowed respectfully with reverence in their eyes. The martial royal realm armored cultivators in the surroundings crawled back one by one. Sigh, this is an ancient land. How can you commit a massacre? The voice in the light sighed softly. It was a gentle voice, but when it entered one's ears, it made one's heart tremble and soul tremble. So powerful. Du Xiaofu looked at the sky with mixed feelings. His ferocious face and his eyes were blood-red. This person was very powerful, but Du Xiaofu was not afraid. His murderous aura filled the sky. Even the air seemed to have frozen. Only the voice of the demon resounded from time to time. Why do you want to commit a massacre? The voice in the light entered Du Xiaofu's ears. His aura rippled as if he was the ruler of this world. Du Xiaofu looked at the sky and said, "You trapped my family and bullied me. Die." Looking at the figure in the light in the sky, Du Xiaofu's eyes were filled with murderous intent. The surrounding figures could clearly feel that even in the face of such a powerful figure, the young man was not afraid. There was a bone-chilling aura coming from the purple-robed young man's body. The formless, murderous aura filled the sky like a tide, causing them to shiver. What a strong hatred! This will damage your cultivation. It's a disaster, not a blessing. There was no fluctuation in the voice, and it was still gentle. He said, "Put down your sword. The murderous aura is not something you can control now. If you don't put it down, you will explode and die soon." I walked out of the stone city and worked hard on the martial path, all for the sake of reuniting with my family. Du Xiaofu pointed at the glowing figure in the sky and said with a ferocious expression, "But you guys bullied me, coaxed me, and trapped my loved ones. Even if I explode today, I will drag a few more of you down with me before I explode." As soon as he finished speaking, Du Xiaofu pointed his sword at the sky. His proud bones clanged. "Give me the sword. If you explode, your sister can't be saved either." As soon as the gentle voice fell, the figure in the light moved. There was a clanging sound that resounded through the sky, releasing multicolored light. Boom! A runic palm print floated in the sky like a divine palm. It wanted to cover heaven and earth and directly suppress Du Xiaofu. Whoosh! Under the palm print, the space only fluctuated slightly, as if there was no sound. However, at this moment, the surrounding creatures trembled violently. The terrifying divine palm covered the sky and seemed incomparably radiant and holy. The divine palm seemed to flow with the mysteries of heaven and earth, making it impossible for creatures to resist. It also quietly suppressed Du Xiaofu. At this moment, Du Xiaofu suddenly felt a sense of despair. The divine palm crushed down, and its aura made him feel despair. He almost couldn't summon the will to fight back. The overwhelming aura made Du Xiaofu's body tremble. He couldn't resist at all. Am I going to be suppressed just like this? I haven't seen my mother and sister, I haven't taken revenge for Tianwu Academy, and my family hasn't reunited. I can't be suppressed, I can't die. Shouts resounded in Du Xiaofu's heart. There were too many things that he hadn't done yet. He couldn't be suppressed just like this. Mother, sister, where are you? The final burst of potential seemed to spread out from the cells in his body. Du Xiaofu struggled to raise his head and wailed. His voice was hoarse and filled with grief and indignation. The third update has been completed. Please support me with fresh flowers. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Please give Xiaoyu some motivation. Chapter 765. The sound waves caused those who heard them to be moved, and those who heard them to tremble. At this moment, it seemed to have been infected by Du Xiaofu's anger and unwillingness. Above the purple-gold heavenly palace, a tiger's roar, a sparrow's cry, and a turtle's cry suddenly sounded. Roar, the silhouette of an azure dragon, an illusory white tiger, an illusory phoenix, and an illusory black tortoise appeared, resisting the divine palm in the sky with a peerless, ferocious aura. The terrifying aura, accompanied by the voices of gods and demons, shocked the figures within the light. The azure dragon roared, the white tiger galloped, the phoenix spread its wings and circled, the black tortoise screeched, and the four beasts circled around. The golden, profound energy in Du Xiaofu's body exploded, and the golden wings of the great Pong on his back expanded to over 1,000 feet in size. This moment was like a miracle. Du Xiaofu was like a demon god descending. Heavens, what a terrifying divine weapon! What a ferocious fellow! His ferocity is something that few people of the same generation in the clan can compare to. In the distance, gasps of surprise could not help but resound. Ah! Du Xiaofu howled miserably as he resisted the terrifying divine palm. However, his body was also lacerated and dripping with blood. Poochie, poochie! Du Xiaofu coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. The fiendish aura wreaked havoc within his body, corroding his soul and physical body. Brat, why struggle? You're just asking for trouble. Do you really want to see your mother and sister? A gentle voice rang out, landing in Du Xiaofu's ears. My family is here, connected by blood. I naturally want to see them. Du Xiaofu raised his head. The struggling azure dragon, white tiger, phoenix, and black tortoise circled around. If they will all die after you see them, will you see them or not? The gentle voice continued. When this voice entered his ears, Du Xiaofu's ferocious face was filled with murderous intent. Instantly, a look of confusion appeared in his blood-red eyes, as if he had been electrocuted. Your sister was born with a heart that shriveled and sickened by nature. She needs your heart. If you meet her and she knows the truth, she will naturally not want your heart. She would rather die than let you die. At that time, she will definitely die. If your younger sister dies, your mother will definitely be in so much pain that she'll wish she was dead. She'll definitely live like a zombie. What's the point of living then? His gentle voice rang out one sentence after another. That voice was long and sonorous and powerful. His voice also carried a kind of magical power that could penetrate deep into one's soul and reverberate in one's mind, making it unforgettable. If you want to see your sister and sister, that means you want them to die. Do you really want your mother and sister to die? Do you really want your mother and sister and sister? For you? Do you really want your mother and mother and mother? Do you want your sister and mother? Your mother? Swish. As the voice continued to reverberate in his mind, the four beasts around Du Xiaofu on the mountain peak began to collapse. Blood spurted out from his mouth. His body cracked, and pale golden blood flowed out. Swish. Then, the heavenly palace of purple gold was stabbed into the ground. The golden rock wings on his back retracted. Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly became sluggish. Boom! The terrifying divine palm continued to collapse. It was accompanied by a holy light that covered the surrounding sky. It looked incomparably sacred. The divine palm landed on Du Xiaofu's head and immediately dissipated into nothingness. Don't think about seeing them. Let go of your obsession. If you want to see them, you will make your sister and mother pay with their lives. Give up. Within the light, the gentle voice resounded in all directions. It had a magical power. Du Xiaofu stood dispiritedly. His body was covered in blood. He was stained with the blood of many people he had just killed. He looked up slightly. The blood red in his eyes began to fade. Du Xiaofu was silent. His eyes began to turn deep. He did not speak. Obsession. Everything is just an obsession. If you really miss your sister and mother, if you really care about your blood relatives, you should save your sister. You have given your heart to your younger sister. In the future, you will be in her heart. The two of you will be one. You will be able to accompany your mother. I believe your mother will be happy with this outcome. Let go of your obsession. The gentle voice continued to enter Du Xiaofu's ears. Suddenly, young Master Du's chest trembled as if it had been stimulated. There was a faint purple flame that brushed past. His whole body suddenly seemed to have shivered. Obsession. Everything is just an obsession? Suddenly, a golden glow shot out from Du Xiaofu's deep eyes. His gaze was sharp as he stared at the figure within the light. He pointed the tip of the purple gold heavenly sword at the other party and said, "You just want my heart. You're just afraid that my sister and mother won't want my heart. You're thinking too much. If I want your heart, I can kill you at any time. There's no need for me to waste my breath. You're just an obsession. Or perhaps, you can't bear to sacrifice yourself to save your sister." The gentle voice continued speaking. It was infused with magical power, and it continued to enter Du Xiaofu's ears. "You're just trying to coax me." After saying those words, Du Xiaofu slowly lowered the purple gold heavenly sword in his hand. He sighed softly and looked at the sky. His drunkard father's whereabouts were unknown. Little Blue, Little Tiger, and Du Xiaoyao were nowhere to be found. He could only hope that nothing happened to them. Tianwu Academy hadn't been rebuilt yet. The citizens of Stone City, his master in the ancient heaven sect, and his two uncles were unable to see each other. There was also Dai Xingyu. He wondered if she was still unable to activate the talisman formation due to nervousness. Sigh, perhaps I won't even be able to speak a single word to her in this lifetime. Du Xiaofu sighed as he looked at his surroundings. Amidst the densely packed silhouettes, the two people he wanted to meet were nowhere to be seen. It was difficult for him to even speak a single word to them. My younger sister. Even though I haven't met her yet, she's still my younger sister. How can I not save her? There's no need for you to coax me like this. Du Xiaofu raised his head and looked at the silhouette in the light. Since you want my heart, I'll fulfill your wish. However, I have two conditions. If it's within my means, I'll definitely think of a way to fulfill your wish, the voice in the light said. It was still as gentle as ever, without any fluctuations in its tone. Du Xiaofu looked at the silhouette in the light and said, Firstly, I want my father, mother, and younger sister to be together. I know that with your means, it won't be difficult for you to find my father. As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, countless obscure auras in the surroundings rippled. These words seemed to be extremely sensitive and could touch the nerves of countless people. Du Xiaofu continued, Secondly, I want the boundless tree to be useful. The silhouette in the light seemed to hesitate for a moment before replying gently, All right, I can promise you that. However, the clan doesn't have a complete treasure like the boundless tree. We can only give you a section of the boundless tree. As the gentle voice fell, many obscure auras in the surroundings rippled even more. If that's the case, I'm relieved. Du Xiaofu looked to the east. The stone city was at the place where the sun rose in the east. His gaze moved slightly. Du Xiaofu's eyes were filled with reluctance and disappointment. His emotions were extremely complicated at this moment. Then, with a wave of his hand, Du Xiaofu used the last of his strength to entangle the purple-gold heavenly fault, which was hissing endlessly with a baleful aura, and tied it behind his back once again. Drunkard father, I really want to drink with you again. If you miss me in the future, then let your younger sister drink with you. I really envy you for having a son like me. Actually, I also envy myself for having a father like you. Du Xiaofu muttered softly, the corners of his mouth curving into a smile. However, the curve of this smile was somewhat bitter. Then, he looked at the surrounding sky and was silent for a while, as if he was in a daze. Du Xiaofu continued to mutter to himself, Mother, sister, I think that we won't be able to see each other in this lifetime. I have too many things that I can't accept, too many things that I can't do. Master's instructions, the clan's expectations, I can't accept it. I can't bear to part with it. Sister, in the future, please complete it for me. Okay. As his voice fell, a golden light suddenly jumped out from Du Xiaofu's body. Then, the golden light shone brightly, and energy spread out. Pucci, as the golden light shone brightly, faint golden blood once again seeped out from Du Xiaofu's cracked body. The golden light was about to seep out from his body, as if his body was about to explode. Du Xiaofu's body was already severely injured and cracked. At this moment, the position of his chest directly ruptured. Golden light shot out from his chest, accompanied by mysterious talisman patterns, and a supreme pressure spread out. Sister, you have to be well. Be filial to my parents for me, and protect my clan for me. As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, suddenly, in front of countless trembling eyes, his right hand became like a claw and directly pierced into the crack in his chest. A dazzling golden light burst out, drowning his entire body. Mother, sister, I want to see you. I want to reunite with my family, but I can't do it in the end. Forgive me. His loud voice rumbled like thunder. At this moment, golden light burst out from Du Xiaofu's eyes. Qila, a faint golden and blood-red heart, immediately appeared in Du Xiaofu's palm. This heart beat powerfully like a drum, spreading out multicolored light. It was wrapped in mysterious talisman patterns, showing a kind of vitality, and a terrifying aura surged into the sky. Qila. At this moment, blood spurted out from Du Xiaofu's chest. The blood was faint golden, crystal clear, and radiant, but it looked so sad, as if it was the last of its brilliance. Du Xiaofu's chest was bleeding, but there was a smile on his face. At this moment, the surroundings were silent, and countless gazes were trembling. Sigh, countless obscure auras in the surroundings were sluggish, and then fluctuations rose and fell one after another, with sighs coming out one after another. Big brother. You're so heartless, so heartless. He's third sister's child, and he's also your nephew. Why didn't you just kill him? Why did you have to kill him like this? He's still a child. Do you think that you can sit back and relax just because you're not stained with a single drop of blood? At this moment, there was also a voice that was hoarse, and it resounded in the sky. Flowers, thank you all. Flowers. Chapter 766. As the figure landed, another figure soared through the air and appeared on the mountain peak where Du Xiaofu was at in a ghostly manner, completely silent and undetectable. Pucci. In an ancient and vast space, an otherworldly woman with her eyes closed suddenly opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. My heart feels like it's being stabbed. Why is it like this? The girl's eyes reddened as her body trembled. She felt extremely uncomfortable in her heart, as though someone was digging her heart out. She murmured, "Everyone says that twins can share the same sentiments. My dear brother, are you the one suffering right now?" Energy fluctuated. Within the ancient space, a beautiful woman was sitting cross-legged. She was also as arrogant as ever. Chi. Suddenly, the beautiful woman opened her eyes. She placed one hand on her chest. Her eyes flickered, and her face was pale. Her chest was trembling from the intense pain. It was a heart-wrenching pain. On the mountain peak, a middle-aged man with disheveled hair came. He was wearing a dark robe, and it was unknown how long it had been since he last washed it. He looked like a beggar. However, one could vaguely see that under his disheveled hair was an extremely handsome face. The person walked towards Du Xiaofu. His eyes were slightly red and moist, and he stumbled all the way as if he was drunk. "You're not lucky. You're not as lucky as Xiaojing. You silly boy." The middle-aged man walked towards Du Xiaofu. He waved his hand and a dazzling light enveloped Du Xiaofu's chest, stopping Du Xiaofu's bleeding. "Second young master, give this item to this child too." After he sighed, Elder Ming appeared on the mountain peak. A long leaf appeared in his hand. The leaf was glowing, and the mysterious runes on it shone brightly. It attracted the energy of heaven and earth. On Elder Ming's wrinkled face, his eyes sighed. The leaf in his hand was folded into the shape of a heart. It was wrapped in mysterious runes, and he passed it to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man turned his head and looked at Elder Ming. He nodded slightly and stuffed the leaf into Du Xiaofu's chest. A vast amount of energy surged into Du Xiaofu's chest. Du Xiaofu still stood tall and straight as he gazed at Elder Ming, and a dazzling and powerful heart throbbed within his palm as he tossed it over and said, "Quickly go save my younger sister. Remember what you promised me, otherwise I'll absolutely not let all of you off even if I'm in the netherworld." "I've sinned. I've sinned." Elder Ming took Du Xiaofu's heart. Light rippled on his wrinkled face and he left. "It's finally done." High up in the sky, Protector Qing Yu looked at Du Xiaofu, who was on the mountain peak, with a cold glint in her eyes. Then, she left with Elder Ming. "Who are you?" On the mountain peak, Du Xiaofu looked at the middle-aged man with disheveled hair. His face was pale, blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were white. "Your mother called me second brother." The middle-aged man's hand seals changed and the light faded. The blood on Du Xiaofu's chest had stopped, and it seemed to have healed. "Oh." Du Xiaofu nodded slightly. He looked at the middle-aged man and said, "Can I leave now?" "You shouldn't have come here. It's better to leave this place as soon as possible. You shouldn't have come here." The middle-aged man nodded. He turned his head to look at the glowing figure in the sky. His eyes seemed to ripple under his disheveled hair. His voice was still hoarse as he said, "My beloved big brother, just give him what you promised him." He exchanged his heart for it. Chi, the flowing light in the sky, fluctuated, and a chinkuan bag fell. Then, the gentle voice continued, "Second brother, pay attention to your status. Send him out of the clan. Return to where he came from." As the voice faded, the glowing figure slowly disappeared. That terrifying aura also disappeared from the surroundings. "This is the boundless wood. Keep it well. It was exchanged with your life." The middle-aged man handed the chinkuan bag to Du Xiaofu. Then, he handed a pill to Du Xiaofu and said, "This is the vitality pill. It can keep you alive for a short period of time. As for how long it can keep you alive, I don't know. Everything will depend on the will of the heavens. I hope a miracle will happen in the remaining time. This is all I can do for you." Du Xiaofu didn't say anything. He took the pill from the middle-aged man and stuffed it into his mouth. His body became weaker and weaker, and he couldn't hold on any longer. Finally, he fainted. Stone City, Du family. Late at night, it was still brightly lit. So ruthless, so ruthless. How can they be so ruthless? In a room in the courtyard, Zhang Qingchuan's illusory body trembled. His inverted triangular eyes were filled with rage and chilling intent. He viciously slammed his hand down, causing a wooden table in the room to shatter into pieces. "Brother Qingchun, what happened to Xiaofu?" Du Xiaoman looked at the young man lying on the bed. His face was pale, his breathing was weak, and his body was covered in blood. Her eyes were wet with worry. Hearing Zhang Qingchuan's words, she became even more nervous. "Heart gouge. His heart has been gouged out. It's all my fault. I knew I couldn't let him go alone. Nothing good will come out of those people's arrival. It's all my fault. Those bastards, no matter who they are, I, Zhen Qingchun, swear that I won't let them go." Zhen Qingchun's eyes were filled with anger as he shouted, "It's all my fault. I knew I couldn't let him go alone." Heart gouge. Hearing this, Du Xiaoman's body trembled violently. Her delicate body staggered and sat on the edge of the bed. Her eyes instantly turned white. Cough. On the bed, Du Xiaofu coughed softly. His eyelashes moved slightly, and then he opened his eyes. Two familiar faces appeared in front of him. "How did I come back?" Looking at the two familiar faces, Du Xiaofu's pale face revealed a smile. "7 days ago, you suddenly lay at the gate. We didn't know who sent you back. Third brother, what happened to you? Don't scare me." Du Xiaoman was worried. 7 days ago, someone found Du Xiaofu at the gate. His body was covered in blood, and his breathing was weak. The whole Du family was worried. "It's been so many days. I didn't think I would still be alive." Du Xiaofu struggled to stand up. He smiled bitterly. It seemed that those people had sent him back. Did they do it? Zhen Qingchun looked at Du Xiaofu and asked, a cold light flashing in his eyes. With the help of his elder sister Du Xiaoman, Du Xiaofu stood up dispiritedly. The purple gold heavenly tower was still on his body. He let out a sigh of relief and looked at Zhen Qingchun. "Brother Qingchun, do you know everything? You don't even have a heart. How could I not know? You're still alive because there's life force in your body supporting you. There's a treasure in your chest, but all of this can't last for long. The heart is the most important of the 5 organs. There's no way to reverse the situation. What did they do to you?" Zhen Qingchun asked as he stared at Du Xiaofu. His illusory eyes were filled with rage, and they were also moist. "I did it myself." Du Xiaofu looked at Zhen Qingchun and smiled. Hearing this, Zhen Qingchun seemed to understand something. His illusory body trembled and he asked, "I understand now. Your sister's illness has something to do with the heart. They needed your heart, so they came to find you. Is that right?" "It's all in the past." Du Xiaofu didn't say much. He looked at his elder sister Du Xiaoman and said, "Elder sister, uncle and the others don't know about this yet, right? My father and second uncle only know that you're seriously injured. They don't know that even your heart is—" Du Xiaoman's words were on the tip of her tongue, but her throat began to choke. She had heard Zhang Qingchuan's serious words just now. What's more, if one's heart was not there, how could one live? "Promise me that you won't tell uncle and second uncle." "I don't want them to worry," Du Xiaofu said to Du Xiaoman. Du Xiaoman choked with sobs and nodded. She looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "What about you? What will you do?" "I don't have much time left." Du Xiaofu felt that although there was still life in his body, he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. In addition, he had used the heavenly palace of purple gold. There was also a terrifying evil spirit in his body that even the golden-winged rock technique couldn't suppress. Misfortunes never come singly. This time, Du Xiaofu knew that he really wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. "By the way, Brother Qingchun, I found what you wanted. See if it's the endless wood. However, it doesn't seem to be the bark of the endless wood. It's a section." I don't know if it'll be useful to you. Du Xiaofu handed a Qingquan bag to Zhen Qingchun. Zhen Qingchun was slightly stunned. He opened the Qingquan bag, and an arm-length branch emitted a multicolored light. Energy fluctuated, and an endless aura fluctuated. Endless wood. This is the branch of the endless wood. It's much better than the bark. I really need this kind of treasure. Zhen Qingchun was shocked. Then, he was pleasantly surprised. However, his expression changed immediately. He looked at Du Xiaofu and asked, "Did you exchange for this?" Du Xiaofu shook his head and said to Zhen Qingchun, "How long can I live?" "I don't know. No one can live without a heart. You're already a miracle now. You're also supported by the life in your body." Zhen Qingchun's gaze was extremely serious. He thought of countless methods in his mind, but none of them worked. "Is that so?" Du Xiaofu was absent-minded for a moment. Then, he said to Du Xiaoman, "Big sister, has anyone from the imperial capital come to Stone City recently?" Chapter 767. You're talking about the first princess, right? Du Xiaoman shook her head. She looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "She hasn't been here before. There are some things that I don't know if I should tell you." "What is it?" Du Xiaofu asked curiously. His elder sister wasn't a fussy person. This matter should be special. Du Xiaoman sighed. Then, she told Du Xiaofu about the national celebration. Du Xiaoman frowned and continued, "This time, the national celebration didn't mention you, the brave God King. Nor did they mention the World Society or the Heavenly Beast Hall. However, the imperial capital sent people to Chaos Demon City. They said that they were here to thank you on behalf of the Imperial Palace and the Empire. They brought many gifts. The Stone Dragon Empire's little scheme is obviously because they are afraid of you overshadowing them. After all, the Du family of the Du residents has a lot of roots in the military. They are also afraid that you will steal the limelight from the Great Wheel sect. If I'm not wrong, the Stone Dragon Empire intends to rely on the Great Wheel sect in addition to the Divine Light Court." Zhen Qingchun looked at him with disdain. He said, "It's just a small empire. Why would they be afraid of you?" Sigh. Before he finished speaking, Zhen Qingchun sighed again. He looked at Du Xiaofu and couldn't help but worry. If it was in the past, this kid wouldn't even care about a small empire. However, this kid didn't even care about it now. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly and said softly to Zhen Qingchun and his elder sister, Du Xiaoman, "I'd better make a trip to the imperial capital. There's not much time left. If I can go somewhere, I'll go somewhere." "No. With your current situation, you can only go to the Ancient Sky sect first. Although I can't do anything, I hope the Ancient Sky sect can. I hope that a miracle will happen." Zhen Qingchun said to Du Xiaofu seriously. Zhen Qingchun knew that Du Xiaofu had a special relationship with the Ancient Sky sect. If there was a way, the Ancient Sky sect would definitely do their best. That kind of large sect had a huge foundation and might have a way. "Let's go to Dragon City first while we still have some time," Du Xiaofu said with a smile. He insisted on making a trip to the imperial capital. He hoped to be able to settle some matters in the remaining time. A moment later, Du Xiaofu arrived outside the courtyard. At this moment, outside the courtyard, Du Zhixiong, Du Zhenwu, and the other Du family clansmen stood together with Yu Wanli, the mysterious Dragon King, the Flame Carp King, the Golden Condor King, and the Solitary Sword King. Seeing Du Xiaofu walk out, the worry in everyone's eyes eased a little, and they heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. "I'm fine. Don't worry, everyone. Go and rest." Du Xiaofu waved his hand, and a smile appeared on his pale face. Being able to see his clansmen in the end was already a blessing from the heavens. A moment later, Yu Wanli, the mysterious Dragon King, the Golden Condor King, and the Solitary Sword King gathered in the room. They all looked at Du Xiaofu with a solemn, worried, frightened, and shocked expression. "How can one live without a heart? Who did this? My Ancient Sky sect will never let him go." Yu Wanli shouted angrily, and his eyes were filled with worry. He said to Du Xiaofu, "Junior brother, let's go back to the Ancient Sky sect and think of a way. We can't delay any longer." "Third senior brother, I'll go to the imperial capital first, and then return to the Manchu." After Du Xiaofu finished speaking, he said to the mysterious Dragon King, the golden condor king, and the solitary sword king. I didn't hide my situation from you. I can die at any time. Go to the chaotic demon city to get the antidote for the goo poison pill. You'll be free in the future, and you won't be restricted by me anymore. The mysterious dragon king, the golden condor king, and the solitary sword king looked at each other, and their eyes changed. Master, I'm a demonic beast. I didn't take the goo poison pill, but since I've already submitted to you, I'll submit to you as long as you're alive. Even if you leave, I'll still be Du Hao's master. The mysterious dragon king stepped forward and bowed his head respectfully. The mysterious dragon king was a demonic beast, a Xinyun scarlet dragon. He had a proud bloodline, but since he had already submitted, he wouldn't change his mind. Third young master, I, the solitary sword king, am not talented, but as long as you're alive, you're my master. The solitary sword king nodded and bowed. The golden condor king will continue to follow you. The golden condor king stepped forward. Will continue to follow you. Chanyu Xiu, the flame carp king, and the others all bowed. In the beginning, they were forced to follow him, but after this period of time, they knew that the young man in front of them was an overlord in martial arts, and he could conquer countries. From the fact that he didn't hesitate to build the entire stone city, they could see how skilled he was in both civil and military matters. If he was able to come out unscathed, he wouldn't even need 30 years to achieve his grand ambitions, and his might would shake Central State. It was a pity that the heavens were jealous of geniuses. Such a young overlord had met with such misfortune, and it was a pity. But in their hearts, they were already convinced. Moreover, they knew very well how many benefits they had obtained. Following by his side for a period of time was enough to be a great opportunity. Looking at the people in front of him, Du Xiaofu nodded slightly and didn't say anything more. Compared to his mother's clan, the mysterious dragon king, the golden condor king, and Chanyu Xiu, who had once tried to kill him, were undoubtedly more heartwarming to him. The next morning, outside the gate of the Du family, Du Zhixiang, Du Zhenwu, and many other aunties brought many spiritual medicines and elixirs to Du Xiaofu. Xiaofu, you're too pale and your breath is weak. You brought all these spiritual medicines and elixirs back. See if any of them are useful. Take them quickly. Child, take all these elixirs and spiritual medicines. You look so weak. I'm worried. Why did you go out now? Father, second uncle, auntie, take them back. These spiritual medicines and elixirs won't be able to cure third brother's injuries. We'll think of something. Don't worry too much. Du Xiaoman stood in front of Du Xiaofu and said. Although she spoke casually, her eyes were serious. She didn't want Du Xiaofu to talk too much. She was afraid that it would affect his body and drain his vitality. This was what Jin Qingchun had told her. Xiaofu, what's wrong with you? Why are you like this after going out for a few days? Du Zhenwu was worried. It wasn't difficult for him to see Du Xiaofu's serious condition. His daughter Du Xiaoman's serious expression couldn't escape his prying eyes as her father. Uncle, don't worry. Don't worry about me. Du Xiaofu forced a smile on his pale face. Looking at the clansmen around him, he was very happy. Father, don't let Xiaofu talk anymore. He needs to rest. Du Xiaoman stopped the clansmen and signaled the mysterious dragon king to take Du Xiaofu away. Roar! The mysterious dragon king transformed into a Xinyun scarlet dragon and hovered in the air. His aura rumbled and resounded throughout the stone city. Then, everyone left for the imperial capital of the Stone Dragon Empire. Dragon City was still the same as before. It was bustling with activity and noise. The brave God King is back. Suddenly, Dragon City was in an uproar. Someone saw the brave God King's figure appear in the imperial capital. According to the people in Enlightenment City and many generals, the brave God King led many experts in the Battle of Enlightenment City and slaughtered many experts from the three empires. That was how we managed to fend off the three empires. I heard about it too. If it wasn't for the brave God King leading experts to rescue us, we would have been defeated before the Great Luan sect arrived. I heard that the battle lasted for several months. If it wasn't for the World Union and Sky Beast Hall under the brave God King, we wouldn't have been able to fend them off for so long. The national celebration, the brave God King, World Union, and Sky Beast Hall didn't even mention him. It's disappointing. I heard that the North vanquishing monarch went to the palace to speak for the brave God King. I don't know why, but there was no news in the end. Did the brave Divine King come to Dragon City to ask for an explanation? I heard that the first princess and the brave God King have been together for a long time. Why do I see the first princess and the saint of the Great Luin sect together? The brave God King is the protector of the Stone Dragon Empire. Although the Du royal residence is no longer around, the brave God King is still from the Du family. They have protected our empire for thousands of years. Perhaps this is what the palace is afraid of. Lower your voice. There are some things that we can't talk about. We don't want to invite trouble. The brave God King's arrival in Dragon City had stirred up the entire imperial capital. Marquis of the Dragon City Armored Army leads the Dragon City Armored Army to pay our respects to the brave God King. Marquis of Dapa City's 3 Union is here to pay our respects to the brave God King. Marquis of the Stone Dragon Empire's 4th Army, Marquis of Chi Ming and Marquis of Sky Spirit are here to pay our respects to the brave God King. Marquis of the Stone Dragon Empire's 5th Army, Marquis of Heavenly Sun is here to pay our respects to the brave God King. We welcome the brave God King back to the imperial capital. Outside the brave God King's mansion, a dense crowd of figures stood in an orderly manner. Many forces and generals in the imperial capital's army came to pay their respects when they heard that the brave God King had returned to the imperial capital. In Enlightenment City, these people had witnessed what the brave God King had done with their own eyes. The brave God King wasn't famous during the celebration, so they felt it was unfair for him. Now that the brave God King had returned to the imperial capital, they couldn't help but pay their respects. They knew that they couldn't let the brave God King suffer. Generals and dukes, my third brother is injured and can't meet all of you. He sent me here to thank all of you for your kind intentions. Thank you. I would like to thank all of you on behalf of my third brother. Thank you. Du Xiaoman spoke with a sweet voice. The young lady of the Du family came out personally to explain. It seems like the brave God King is injured and can't meet us. The brave God King's injuries shouldn't be light. Not long ago, I saw the brave God King from afar. His face was pale and bloodless. Everyone was worried and didn't force the issue. They expressed their understanding. After the generals and dukes asked about the brave God King's injuries, they bade farewell and left. There were also some who couldn't bear to leave and hoped that they could meet him. Why are you so foolish? You will die if you do this. You idiot. You are so stupid. In the brave God King's residence, Ouyang Shuang heard the news and came over. After hearing about Du Xiaofu's situation from Du Xiaoman, her eyes were instantly filled with tears. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she scolded Du Xiaofu while hammering his shoulders. Chapter 768. Seeing Emperor Cheng Shuang, let's deal with him in the future. He can. Du Xiaoman pulled Ouyang Shuang back. Her eyes were red with worry. She also wanted to beat up her third brother. However, Du Xiaoman knew that her third brother was in danger, and he still wanted to come to the imperial capital. You bastard, I know you came to the Dragon City for Princess Chengshan. However, she left with Dongli Chihuang 3 days ago. Why didn't you go to the ancient heaven sect to think of a solution? Instead, you came to the Dragon City. Do you not want to live anymore? Ouyang Shuang was pulled back by Du Xiaoman. She couldn't help but curse. She didn't care about her image as tears fell from her eyes. A few days ago, because Du Xiaofu had left Shi City, Ouyang Shuang returned to the imperial capital by herself. She also learned that the eldest princess, Cheng Shengnan, and the holy son of the Great Wheel sect had left. Everyone was silent when they heard Ouyang Shuang's curse. They also wanted to curse, but they didn't dare to. Only Ouyang Shuang dared to curse like this. She left. Hearing Ouyang Shuang's words, Du Xiaofu was slightly taken aback. His ashen face then revealed a bitter smile that did not leave a trace. Xiaofu's injuries are serious. Don't bully Xiaofu anymore. Yuan Shanshan also went up and pulled Ouyang Shuang back. She was as worried as Ouyang Shuang. Xiaofu, you're a disciple of the ancient heaven sect. Go back to the ancient heaven sect and see if there's a solution. Ouyang Ling stayed in the imperial capital for the past few days. When he heard that Du Xiaofu was seriously injured, he naturally came over. After arriving, he understood the situation. It was more serious than he imagined. Ouyang Ling was even more worried. His handsome face was grave. Uncle Ling, I'll return to the ancient heaven sect as soon as possible. Du Xiaofu nodded and then said to the mysterious Dragon King, send me to the palace. Since they're here, I have to go. Then I'll go to Prince Xie's mansion to see Grandpa Xie. Do you really want to go to the palace? That palace. Du Xiaoman, Ouyang Shuang, and the others looked at Du Xiaofu, clearly dissatisfied with the royal family. I know what you want to say. Since I'm here, there's no harm in going. I won't have the chance to go in the future, Du Xiaofu said softly. He knew what Ouyang Shuang and Big Sister wanted to say. All right, Golden Condor King, Absolute Sword King, Flame Carp King, Stone Turtle King, Ice Python King, you guys come with me. If this palace dares to cause any trouble, I will destroy it today. Yu Wanli said in a deep voice. He had heard a little about the imperial palace's attitude towards his junior brother from Du Xiaoman and the others. In addition, he was in a bad mood recently and wanted to vent his anger. All right, Golden Condor King, Stone Turtle King, Absolute Sword King, Flame Carp King, and the others immediately stood up. At this moment, as long as Yu Wanli gave the order, they would immediately attack and destroy the palace. Yuan Shanshan and Ouyang Ling looked at each other and sighed helplessly in their hearts. If these people really wanted to destroy the palace, with Yu Wanli around, no one would be able to stop them today. Third senior brother, you can't. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. He was really afraid that his third senior brother would really destroy the palace. According to Du Xiaofu's understanding of his third senior brother, destroying the Stone Dragon Empire was nothing to him. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. In short, from now on, I'll follow you closely. Yu Wanli's expression was stern. He was already extremely regretful. He shouldn't have let his junior brother leave alone a few days ago. That was why such a big thing happened now. He had no way to explain it to his master when he returned, and he was even more worried about his junior brother. As for the Stone Dragon Empire, Yu Wanli had been cultivating in the ancient heaven sect for dozens of years. It wasn't easy for him to come out and destroy a small empire to vent his anger for his junior brother. It really wasn't a big deal. The imperial palace was dazzling with gold and jade. It was still heavily guarded as usual. The brave God King is here. Greetings, brave God King. Outside the imperial palace, the guards were excited to see Du Xiaofu. They had long heard of the Courage God King's deeds in Enlightenment City from the army. Back in the imperial capital, the Courage God King had severely injured the human king Lu Kuan and displayed the might of the Stone Dragon Empire. They immediately stepped forward and saluted. Inside the palace, there happened to be a young man who looked very beautiful. He had distinct eyebrows, a straight nose, and a slightly plump body. He was escorted by many people. This young man was the third prince, Cheng Chao. When he saw Du Xiaofu at the entrance of the imperial palace, he looked at Du Xiaofu with a complicated expression. Greetings, third prince. Seeing Cheng Chao, the surrounding guards immediately saluted him respectfully. Bringing so many strangers to the imperial palace, Du Xiaofu, what are you trying to do? Are you rebelling? Cheng Chao looked at Du Xiaofu with a hint of arrogance. In the past, Cheng Chao was more and more afraid of Du Xiaofu. However, it was different now. Recently, he had the support of the Great Luan Sect's saint. The Great Luan Sect's saint even promised him in private that he would let him cultivate in the Great Luan Sect. In the future, he wouldn't have to worry about Du Xiaofu anymore. Slap, however, as soon as Cheng Chao finished speaking, a crisp slap landed on his face. Biffed! The slap landed directly on Cheng Chao's face, causing him to fall from his demonic beast mount. His face was swollen and red, and his mouth was dripping with blood. He couldn't say a word for a long time. How dare you speak the third young master's name so bluntly? Rebellion? So what if I destroy this tiny stone dragon empire? The Flame Carp King shouted loudly. He had a bad temper. The Flame Carp King knew that the third young master was accompanied by the ancient Heaven Sect's third senior brother. He was worried that he couldn't find a reason to destroy the Stone Dragon Empire. The surrounding people were already stunned. Behind Cheng Chao, The crowd couldn't help but step back. They didn't dare to say a word. Let's go. I'm going to see the emperor. Du Xiaofu didn't say anything, nor did he look at Cheng Chao. He directly entered the imperial palace. Naturally, no one dared to stop him. Cheng Chao subconsciously retreated to the side. Bullshit, Prince. Do you believe that I can destroy you at any time? Next time you see the third young master, you better behave yourself. Otherwise, I won't spare you. The mysterious Dragon King stood beside Cheng Chao and pretended to stomp on Cheng Chao. Cheng Chao was so scared that he stepped back with a pale face. Senior brother Du, father sent me to pick you up. At the same time, a girl about the same age as Cheng Chao hurried over. The girl was delicate and beautiful. Under her slender eyelashes, her eyes were big and sparkling like black gems. She was the second Princess Cheng Yin. Her originally round and cute figure was extremely hot now. Her short braids had grown into long hair. They were black and shiny, hanging down to her slim waist. Girls changed 18 times between childhood and womanhood. Cheng Yin had grown into a slender and elegant woman. She was extremely attractive. Looking at the miserable Cheng Chao not far away, Cheng Yin sighed inwardly. She didn't say anything else. The Golden Dragon Palace was grand and magnificent. It had cornices, green tiles, a group of beasts, and painted pillars. It looked mysterious and quiet. From afar, it looked like a golden palace. Third senior brother, please wait outside. I'll go in alone. In front of the Golden Dragon Palace, Du Xiaofu gestured to Yuan Li and the mysterious Dragon King. He then entered the Golden Dragon Palace alone. Inside the Golden Dragon Palace, the Imperial Palace's dragon chi was dense. The cornices and coiling dragons, golden scales and golden armor, were vivid and lifelike, as if they were about to soar into the sky. Inside the palace, the lights were shining brightly. The Imperial Palace's dragon chi was everywhere, making it difficult for people to breathe. Their chi almost stagnated. In the center of the palace, Emperor Cheng was wearing a dragon robe. He stood with his hands behind his back. He was rather fat and not very tall, but he had an absolute majesty. Du Xiaofu walked into the palace and looked at Emperor Cheng. He didn't bow first, but just looked at him quietly. That majesty was not worth mentioning to Du Xiaofu at the moment. Nephew, I received news that you were seriously injured. I can't leave the Imperial Palace to visit you due to some special reasons. It seems that your injuries are really serious. Emperor Cheng was greatly astonished when he saw Du Xiaofu's ghastly pale face and weak aura. Emperor Cheng, you're so considerate. Greetings to Emperor Cheng. Du Xiaofu nodded slightly. By the way, nephew, thank you for the help of the World Society and the Celestial Beast Hall during this national crisis. Emperor Cheng looked at Du Xiaofu with an awkward expression. He looked at Du Xiaofu's expression and said, the national celebration, Emperor Cheng, you don't have to say too much. I understand your intentions. The stability of the empire is the best. Du Xiaofu said, nephew, I'm sorry. I'm ashamed. Emperor Cheng looked ashamed and didn't put on the airs of an emperor. Emperor Cheng, you're too polite. Du Xiaofu smiled and then asked, has the first princess gone back? Emperor Cheng's eyes flickered slightly. He said, Shang Nan has returned to the Divine Light Court. It's said that there will be a grand event in the Central Plains soon. The Divine Light Court hopes that she can go back to prepare. Oh, Du Xiaofu nodded with a calm expression. He was seriously injured and then left. Emperor Cheng walked him to the Golden Dragon Palace. Seeing Yuan Li, the mysterious Dragon King, the Golden Condor King, and the others were slightly moved. After leaving the Imperial Palace, Du Xiaofu was about to go to Lord Xie's residence when he found that the North Vanquishing Prince and Xie Fei were already waiting outside. You don't even have a heart anymore. What happened to you? How did you end up like this? Chapter 769. On the wrinkled face of the North Vanquishing King, his heart ached for the purple-robed young man. He said seriously, I'll let you use my heart. I'm old and I've lived long enough. Let's not talk about the fact that it's impossible for other people's hearts to be suitable. How many people in this world can do such a thing? It's really hard to do. Yuan Li said to the North Vanquishing King. He knew the problem behind this. Maybe other bodies could be reattached, but the heart was the most important part of the 5 organs. No, I have to think of a way. There must be a way. The North Vanquishing King left. He had to find a way to save his cheap grandson. He couldn't let him die. Du Xiaofu was helpless. He couldn't stop the North Vanquishing King, so he could only let him leave. All right, I'll go back to the ancient heaven sect to see my master tomorrow. Dusk, Courage God Manor. Du Xiaofu smiled and said to Dark Wolf and Phantom, "There's no need to leave anyone in the Courage God Manor. You guys can go to the Chaos Demon City." Yes. Dark Wolf and Phantom looked at Du Xiaofu, who was on the verge of death. Both of them looked extremely serious. Was the Courage God King really going to die this time? Night fell. Du Xiaofu was locked in the room by Ouyang Shuang and Big Sister Du Xiaoman. He couldn't move at all. However, the second Princess Chang Yin came to visit. She brought a lot of medicine and pills from the palace and said that she wanted to see the Courage God King alone. Du Xiaofu met with the second Princess Chang Yin alone. She had grown into a slender and elegant woman and was no less beautiful than her elder sister. "Senior Du, how's your injury?" Chang Yin asked. Her eyes were filled with worry, but her expression was sincere. "It's quite serious." Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. His injury wasn't as simple as it seemed. "You have to recuperate well. I won't disturb you anymore. I'm here to apologize to Senior Du on behalf of the Qing family." Cheng Yin looked at Du Xiaofu with some ripples in her eyes. After she finished speaking, she walked to the side of the door. Suddenly, she turned around and said, "Senior Du, if something happens in the future, don't blame my eldest sister. As a member of the royal family, sometimes she can't help herself. There are too many responsibilities on her shoulders. She is the most tired person in the Cheng family. Also, at that time in the Imperial Hot Spring, I already knew that you were there." After saying that, Cheng Yan's cheeks turned red and she left the room shyly. Du Xiaofu paused for a moment, then smiled bitterly. At night, Dragon City was still very lively and noisy. The North Vanquishing Prince, the East Vanquishing Prince, the South Vanquishing Prince, and many other nobles and major forces sent countless elixirs and pills overnight. The entire Dragon City knew that the brave God King was severely injured and was on the verge of death. Countless people came to the brave God King's manor to wait. Many old people sent various healing methods to the brave God King's manor, hoping that he could recover soon. Oh no, something big has happened. Late at night, Du Xiaoman ran into Du Xiaofu's room. She looked serious and said to Du Xiaofu, "The North Vanquishing Prince, the East Vanquishing Prince, and the South Vanquishing Prince have brought many marquises and generals to kneel outside the Imperial Palace. They want the Imperial Palace to use the Imperial Palace's dragon energy to heal you." After pausing for a moment, Du Xiaoman continued, "However, the Imperial Palace didn't allow it. They said that the Imperial Palace's dragon energy is the fortune of the entire empire and needs to suppress the entire empire. They are still in a stalemate. The 3 old kings are very influential, and more people are joining them. I heard that the Guo Manor, Ghost King Manor, and Gu Manor are already on their way. I'm afraid there will be a big change soon." Grandpa Xie and the others are kneeling outside the Imperial Palace. Du Xiaofu stood up. His blood was fluctuating, and he was coughing. The North Vanquishing Prince, the South Vanquishing Prince, and the East Vanquishing Prince were already so old, but they were kneeling outside the Imperial Palace for him. This moved Du Xiaofu, and he wanted to stop them. The Imperial Palace's dragon energy has been around for thousands of years. It is definitely a rare treasure. If you can absorb it, it will be beneficial to you. However, it won't solve the root of the problem. Zhen Qingchun said. The Imperial Palace's dragon energy had been around for thousands of years. It had gathered the fortune of an entire empire. Such a treasure was enough to tempt countless super experts. Third brother, Brother Qingchun said that the Imperial Palace's dragon energy is useful to you. Why don't you absorb it? With the North Vanquishing Prince, the South Vanquishing Prince, and the East Vanquishing Prince, perhaps the Cheng family will be forced to agree. Du Xiaoman said to Du Xiaofu, "The Imperial Palace will definitely not agree. The Imperial Palace's dragon energy is a precious treasure. The Cheng family will never leave the Golden Dragon Palace because they are guarding the Imperial Palace's dragon energy. As long as the Imperial Palace's dragon energy is there, even super experts who want to forcibly seize it will end up in a life and death struggle. Most likely, they will return empty-handed. Jin Qingchun said to Du Xiaofu. Once the Imperial Palace's dragon energy leaks out, the entire empire will lose its final barrier. It will indeed greatly damage the empire's fortune. They won't use the Imperial Palace's dragon energy until the empire is facing a true calamity. Sighing softly, Zhen Qingchun said to Du Xiaofu in a serious tone, "If you were more important than the entire empire, perhaps they would have used the Imperial Palace's draconic aura. However, it seems that the Chung family doesn't think that you are more important than the entire empire. Moreover, your life is hanging by a thread. I suggest that we directly seize the Imperial Palace's draconic aura." A wry smile appeared on Du Xiaofu's face. After pondering for a moment, he said to his eldest sister, "Du Xiaoman, eldest sister, please inform my third senior brother. I have to rush back to the Ancient Heaven Sect tonight." "If you are going to the Ancient Heaven Sect now, then what about the North Vanquishing Prince, the South Vanquishing Prince, and the East Vanquishing Prince? They are still kneeling outside the Imperial Palace." Du Xiaoman asked doubtfully. "I can't go. If I go, Grandpa Xia, old Prince Ouyang, and old Prince Jiang will definitely not leave. In the future, their relationship with the Imperial Palace will become more and more serious. Only when I leave can this matter be resolved," Du Xiaofu said. He couldn't go to the Imperial Palace. He knew the North Vanquishing Prince's temper. Once all the princes arrived, the Chung family would be in trouble. The consequences could be imagined. Du Xiaofu didn't want to make things difficult for the North Vanquishing Prince. If he died immediately, who would be able to protect them in the future? "No, this time, I must go to the Ancient Heaven Sect. I have to take care of you." After a while, in the main hall, Ouyang Shuang's attitude was firm. She pleaded to Wanli, "Senior brother Yu, can you take me to the Ancient Heaven Sect?" "All right, let's go together. After all, it's just the few of you. I can still make this decision." Yu Wanli nodded. There were not many people going to the Ancient Heaven Sect this time. Other than Du Yu and Du Shui, who he had been bringing along, there were also not many people including Du Xiaoman, Ouyang Shuang, and the mysterious Dragon King. Du Xiaofu couldn't persuade Ouyang Shuang. Seeing that his third senior brother had nodded, he had nothing to say. After that, Du Xiaofu asked the Solitary Sword King, Golden Condor King, Flame Carp King, and the others to wait in the Chaotic Demon City or the Stone City's Du family. Hence, Du Xiaofu and the others went to the Ancient Heaven Sect that very night. The most ruthless imperial family. After knowing that Du Xiaofu had left that very night, the North Vanquishing Prince stood up and looked at the Imperial Palace. In the end, he flicked his sleeves and left. "I heard that the brave God King was severely injured. His life is hanging by a thread. I heard that many kings and dukes knelt and begged the emperor to use the imperial qi to save the brave God King. In the end, they were rejected. The North Vanquishing Prince, the South Vanquishing Prince, and the East Vanquishing Prince are searching for a cure for the brave God King." The news of the brave God King being severely injured spread across the entire Stone Dragon Empire. In just a few days, almost the entire empire knew about it. Everyone was talking about the brave God King. During the previous national celebration, the brave God King's name was not mentioned. However, in private, the brave God King's reputation was extremely high. This time, when the news of the brave God King being severely injured and hanging by a thread spread, everyone was shocked and felt pity. Some people heard that the brave God King was about to die. This shocked everyone. Who would have thought that such a ferocious young king would be so severely injured? "God, please protect the brave God King. We are sincerely begging you. We are willing to sacrifice our lives to prolong the brave God King's life." In the Enlightenment City, everyone prayed. They were grateful for the brave God King's kindness. Some old people cried and were willing to sacrifice their lives to prolong the brave God King's life. If the brave God King had not stopped the three empires, the Enlightenment City would have been razed to the ground. What? The Vice City Lord is severely injured and hanging by a thread? I heard that the Vice City Lord's life is hanging by a thread. The citizens of the Stone City also heard the news. They were all shocked and speechless. "We can't let the Vice City Lord go." The citizens of the Stone City were worried and regretful. They went to the Dew family to ask about the situation. The entire city was grateful for the Vice City Lord's kindness. He had blessed the entire city and was reluctant to leave. The Vice City Lord is a young hero with great talent. He is a dragon among men. Could it be that the heavens are jealous of his talent? Everyone felt that it was a pity, and they all sighed. Countless recipes and elixirs were sent to the Dew family, hoping that they could pass them to the Vice City Lord. "You Wanli, I asked you to look after your junior brother, but you made such a huge mistake. I will settle the score with you later." A few days later, Elder Gu Qingyang's voice echoed in the ancient heaven sect. The news of Du Xiaofu's martial uncle being severely injured and hanging by a thread spread throughout the ancient heaven sect, causing countless discussions. Some people said that Du Xiaofu had encountered a super expert outside and suffered heavy injuries. His life was hanging by a thread. Some said that Du Xiaofu had explored a secret place and encountered danger. Now, his life was hanging by a thread.